We'll now go back in the open session, the Board of Aldermen. Approval of the minutes.
We have none.
Report of city officials.
Report of city officials can be found in sections A, B, and C of the agenda and have been placed in all aldermen's mailboxes.
Alderman from the 25th, you have something?
And if I may have a point of personal privilege, this is now the 5th meeting, and I'm hoping that this gets rectified now that we've just hired a clerk.
Okay.
But I haven't had an agenda for 5 of the meetings this
Okay.
session so far. I have one, I have to go get it on my own, which is
I know.
fine.
Yeah, take that up with the staff, and also talk to your secretary to make sure she checks it before the meeting. Also,
Okay.
Like that's so.
We'll take. I've been down here for 9 years, and this is the first time in a session where I haven't had 5 agendas.
Yeah,
I mean,
and the staff should have one on everyone's desk. But take it up with your secretary also. Just make sure that she checks it. Thank you, Alderman. We'll dispense with line items 7 and 8, and 9 and 10. First reading of board bills.
Board Bill 95, sponsored by Alderwoman Davis, an ordinance recommended and approved by the Board of Investment and Apportionment, authorizing and directing the Director of Airports and the Comptroller of the city to the owner and operator of St. Louis Lambert International Airport to enter into and execute the Hunter Engineering Lease Agreement AL004 between the city and Hunter Engineering, granting to the lessee subject to and in accordance with terms, covenants, and conditions of the agreement certain rights and privileges in connection with the occupancy and use of the premises, which is defined and more fully described in Section 201 of the lease agreement. That was approved by the Airport Commission and made part of hereof, and its terms are more fully described in Section 1 of this ordinance, containing a severability clause and containing an emergency clause. Board Bill 96, sponsored by Alderman Kotar, an ordinance authorizing and directing the mayor and the comptroller to execute upon receipt of and in consideration the sum of $5,000 and other good and valuable consideration, a quitclaim deed to remise, release, and forever quitclaim to Midtown Locust Properties, LLC, certain city-owned property located in City Block 74, which property is known as 910 South 4th Street. Board Bill 97, sponsored by Alderman Vaccaro, an ordinance amending ordinance 68536, permitting the seamless transfer of a liquor license between a company selling their business and a company purchasing the business. Board Bill 98, sponsored by Alderwoman Green and Alderman Arnowitz, an ordinance amending the City of St. Louis Revised Code to add certain protections for the homeless. That's the extent of our first reading.
Reference to committee.
Transportation and Commerce Committee, Board Bill 95, to the Ways and Means Committee, Board Bill 96, to the Public Safety Committee, Board Bill 97, and to the Legislation Committee, Board Bill 98. That's the extent of reference to committees.
Second reading.
Following board bill was reported out of the Public Safety Committee, Board Bill 53, sponsored by Alderwomen and Aldermen Howard, Kennedy, Davis, Boyd, Murphy, Vaccaro, and Muhammad. An ordinance directing the Department of Public Safety starting in 2018 to move the City National Night Out from the first Tuesday of August to the first Tuesday of October. The following board bills were reported out of the Health and Human Services Committee. Board Bill 52, Committee Substitute, sponsored by Alderwoman Spencer and Alderwoman Ingracia. An ordinance pertaining to the Animal Code and containing a severability clause. Board Bill 86, Committee Substitute, sponsored by Alderwoman Spencer, an ordinance for regulation and control of air pollution within the city, repealing ordinance 68657, approved June the 2nd, 2010, pertaining to the regulation and control of air pollution, and enacting in lieu thereof new ordinance pertaining to the same subject matter and containing a severability clause, a penalty clause, and an emergency clause. The following board bill was reported out of the Streets Committee, Board Bill 92 as amended, sponsored by Alderman Boyd, an ordinance repealing section 17.62.220 of section 1 of ordinance 2047, approved July the 20th, 1990, pertaining to the administration and the use of parking meter fund, and enacting in lieu thereof a new section pertaining to the same subject matter. Board Bill 94, as amended, sponsored by Alderman Muhammad, and ordinance authorizing the honorary street name Terry Chip Jones Way on East Lee Avenue between North Taylor and Dryden. The following board bills were reported out of the Ways and Means Committee. Board Bill 43, sponsored by Alderwoman Davis, and ordinance approving the petition for the addition of certain real property to the Forsyth Associates Community Improvement District, establishing the expanded Forsyth Community Improvement District and containing a severability clause. Board Bill 93, sponsored by Aldermen and Alderwomen and President Reed, Muhammad, Bosley, Davis, Moore, Vaccaro, Cone, and Howard, and ordinance recommended by the Board of Estimate and Apportionment, making a supplemental appropriation to the annual budget ordinance for fiscal year beginning July the 1st, 2017, and ending June the 30th, 2018, amounting to the sum of $390,000 and containing an emergency clause. That is the extent of our second readings.
Alderman from the 20th.
Thank you, Mr. President. I'd like to move that to suspend the rules to move Board Bills 52 and 86 to the perfection consent calendar.
It's been moved by the Alderman. Are they on everyone's desk? The bills?
No. Where's the
Yeah, they have to be on the desk.
Nolan?
Yeah, why don't we, you were going to try to move it to perfection consent order?
Yes, given the timing, Board Bill 86 requires the hiring of 2 people. I'd like to make sure that we get this perfected today. And given the timing of both, I'd just like to move that we perfect them today. We need to have...
Well, I can't take up that motion. It needs to be on everyone's desk. So what I'll do is I'll move on with the regular perfection consent calendar. And if you guys can get it done by the time we get to the, the tail end of the perfection calendar, then you can take it up there and move it to the regular perfection calendar. So we dispense with line item 14, perfection consent. Hold on for a second. Alderman from the 25th.
Mr. President, I'd like to move Board Bill 48 back to committee. If I could refer Board Bill 48 from the perfection consent calendar back to committee.
All right, go ahead. Okay.
I make a motion that I move Board Bill 48 back to committee.
From the perfection.
From perfection consent.
Okay, Board Bill 48. It's been, and it's your board bill, so it's been moved by the Alderman from the 25th, seconded by the Alderman from the 1st, that we move Board Bill 48 from the perfection consent calendar back to committee.
I'm all right with previous roll.
All right, it's been moved and seconded. There's been a request for previous roll. There's been an objection to previous roll. Madam Clerk, please call the roll.
Alderwoman Tyus. Alderwoman Flowers. Alderman Bosley. Alderman Moore. Alderwoman Hubbard. Alderwoman Ingracia. Alderman Kotar. Alderman Conway. Alderman Gunther. Alderman Vollmer. Alderwoman Martin. Alderman Arnowitz. Alderwoman Murphy. Alderwoman Howard. Alderwoman Green. Alderman Oldenburg. Alderman Rhodey. Alderman Kennedy. Alderwoman Davis. Alderwoman Spencer. Alderman Muhammad. Alderman Boyd. Alderman Vaccaro. Alderman Ogilvie. Alderman Cone. Alderman Williamson. Alderwoman Boyd? President Reed?
Aye.
Alderwoman Hubbard? Alderman Gunther? Alderman Kennedy? Alderwoman Spencer? 24 aye votes.
By your vote, staying the motion. Alderman from 25th. Madam Clerk, please place Board Bill number 48 back in committee.
So noted. Board Bill
Board bills for perfection consent.
Board Bill 9, Committee Substitute, sponsored by Alderman Vaccaro and President Reed, an ordinance requiring the Corrections Commissioner to post a quarterly report on the city's Division of Corrections website regarding administrative segregation of inmates at the city detention centers and containing a severability and an emergency clause. Board Bill 88, sponsored by Alderman Bosley, an ordinance repealing Ordinance 69864 and in lieu thereof enacting a new ordinance prohibiting the issuance of any package or drink liquor license for any currently non-licensed premises within the boundaries of the 3rd Ward Liquor Control District and containing an emergency clause. Board Bill 45 as amended, sponsored by Alderman Rhodey, an ordinance approving the petition to establish the City Foundry Community Improvement District, establishing the City Foundry Community Improvement District, reaffirming certain findings of blight, and finding a public purpose for the establishment of the City Foundry Community Improvement District. Board Bill 40, sponsored by Alderman Vaccaro, an ordinance adding language to the ordinance 62101 that will prohibit the Parking Division Violation Bureau from doubling a parking meter and parking violation fine if payment is received within 20 calendar days or less. If an appeal of the fine occurs either through an administrative or state court where the appellant is found guilty, the fine will not double if the payment is received within 10 or less calendar days. Board Bill 63, sponsored by Alderman Kotar, an ordinance recommended by the Board of Public Service to conditionally vacate travel on the southern north-south alley in City Block 483 East, bounded by Hickory, Grattan, Park, and Dolman. Board Bill 73, sponsored by Alderwoman Davis, an ordinance authorizing the honorary street name Justine M. Peterson Pathway. Justine M. Peterson Pathway will begin at the intersection of North Grand and Windsor Place and run west on Windsor Place to the intersection of North Spring Avenue and Windsor Place. Board Bill 80, sponsored by Alderwoman Spencer, an ordinance establishing a 4-way stop site at the intersection of Oregon and Cherokee by regulating all eastbound and westbound traffic traveling on Cherokee at Oregon and containing an emergency clause. Board Bill 81, sponsored by Alderwoman Spencer, an ordinance establishing a 4-way stop site at the intersection of Louisiana and Potomac by regulating all eastbound and westbound traffic traveling on Potomac at Louisiana and containing an emergency clause. Board Bill 82, sponsored by Alderman Ogilvie, an ordinance recommended by the Board of Public Service to conditionally vacate travel on the eastern strip of Clifton beginning at Columbia and extending southwardly 6152 to 6152 Columbia in City Block 5304 is bounded by Columbia, Sulphur, Magnolia, and Clifton. That's the extent of perfection consent.
Alderman from the 8th, you recognize on the motion for the perfection consent calendar.
Good morning, Mr. President. I move for adoption of the perfection consent calendar.
Moved by the Alderman from the 8th, entertain a second, seconded by the Alderman from the 1st. Any discussion? All in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed, motion carries. Board bills for perfection.
Board Bill 60, Committee Substitute, sponsored by Aldermen and Alderwomen Conway, Oldenburg, Kotar, and Murphy, an ordinance relating to public safety, imposing under and by the authority of Section 67.547 of the revised statute of Missouri, subject to the approval of the voters, a 0.5% sales tax on all retail sales made in the city which are subject to taxation under provisions of Section 144.010 to 144.525 of the revised statute of Missouri solely for the purpose of providing revenues for the operation of the Department of Public Safety, including police and fire divisions, in addition to any and all other sales taxes allowed by law, submitting to the qualified voters a proposal to impose such tax, providing for an election and a manner of voting thereat, providing that if such question shall receive the votes of a majority of the voters voting thereon, that such tax shall be authorized and in effect, and containing an emergency clause.
Alderman from the 8th, you recognize on the perfection of Board Bill number 60, committee substitute.
Good morning, Mr. President. I move for perfection of Board Bill number 60, committee substitute.
Moved by the Alderman from the 8th, entertain a second on motion, seconded by the Alderman from the 23rd. Alderman from the 8th, please proceed.
Good morning, Mr. President. St. Louis County, I guess in April, had passed a Proposition P, and that gave them the ability to increase their already higher than average pay than the city has for our men and women on the police department's pay, to increase their number greatly. What we're attempting to do is a similar Proposition P, but not match what St. Louis County is doing with respect to pay. We're right now looking at the way this bill is, about $6,000. That will still leave our average about $5,000 an officer behind. This bill will raise money not just only for the police officers, the firefighters have parity in the city of St. Louis, and again, they'll receive a corresponding increase. We've also, the last page, Exhibit 1 and Table 1 and Table 2, shows you where all of the proceeds are going to be allocated. Let me put this in perspective. We're not voting the sales tax today. Today, all we're asking you to do is vote affirmatively to put this on the ballot. This would be on the ballot in November special election, and our constituents will have the opportunity to say decisively that this is what we want to do. And historically, our constituents have been supportive of the police and the firefighters because we do recognize, living here in the city of St. Louis, that those services are so important. Now, the big issue here is that if I have a younger police officer, 1 to 10 years in, and they're getting $10,000 more pay in St. Louis County, that's going to be hard for me to keep. Those younger people are looking at dollars and not retirement, because retirement is so far out on them. Except I cannot replace a 2, a 3, a 4, or a 5-year experienced officer or firefighter without having someone in training for 2, 3, 4, or 5 years. Even if we said, okay, you can leave, and I'll put on a class of 300, I don't have that experience. The men and women of our police department and fire department have been very dedicated to the city of St. Louis. Our fire department's average pay is less than what you would receive in most places in St. Louis County. Same thing with our police officers. The disparity in pay has not been that great heretofore, but it will be significantly greater going forward. Given the circumstances we have here in the city of St. Louis, we have to retain as many experienced officers as possible. But not only that, going forward, that when we have a young man or woman looking for a job or a career, what do we say? Well, we pay 10 grand less, and you can work here for 10 years, and you'll finally be vested, and all of these different things. Or you can go to Ladue or Frontenac. I'm not saying those police officers in Ladue and Frontenac have it easier, but I know they're not being shot at. They're not going after the same amount of criminals that we're going at. They're not addressing the same social problems that we have to address here in the city of St. Louis. Again, today is a vote to put this on the ballot. And the reason we're here in July with this is we do have to send a message to the men and women of the police and the fire department that this is an important matter to us. And by passing this out and letting them know that it will be on the ballot in November, hopefully will give them pause not to go after the big money in St. Louis County. Because I think I've convinced the members or the leadership of the police officers and the firefighters that they know in their minds and hearts, and so do their members, that the public has always been receptive to the needs of providing for public safety. Thank you.
All right, thank you. Any further discussion? Any further discussion? Alderman from the first.
Mr. President, members of the board, if the Alderman from the 8th would yield.
Alderman from the 8th, will you yield for questioning to the Alderman from the first?
Yes.
Alderman from the first, please proceed.
Thank you. First of all, I want to congratulate you because you personally have a police department. We all, the other 27 of us, would love to have a police department where we could talk about what our personnel would do. So I want to thank you to know that that's possible as an alderman.
Well, local control.
Yeah, but you didn't say local control. You said the alderman from the 8th control, so I appreciate that. I am not going to support this board bill for a lot of reasons. Whenever we get a new mayor, we always get new taxes. I guess this is my 5th mayor. Always the same thing, new taxes. We gotta bring in more money, so we've got to find a way to do taxes, property taxes, sales taxes, it's taxes on top of taxes. But in the community that I represent, people do not get increased police protection, building division, or any other thing that we always tell them that we're going to do. I want to know when you're doing this comparison of when you've done this comparison of what they make in the county versus what we pay the people here in the city. Did you do any kind of a...
That was an awful long question.
That's all right.
Okay.
They are sometimes. First it was a statement, now it's a question. I want to know if you did some kind of comparison, written comparison of the salaries.
I personally didn't. I know that the Post-Dispatch covered it. I think within that issue, and I did look at and read that article, it demonstrated that. There is out there. We have a good idea of what those pay raises are going to be, but the Post-Dispatch did a really nice comparative analysis.
And what comparison, based on what you read in the Post-Dispatch, what comparison did we do, or that the Post did?
They came up with an $11,000 difference.
Based on base salary, shift differential, uniforms, what was the basis, if you recall?
I believe that will be base salary, or average salary. I'm sorry, average salary. But I will pull up that article. I'll have someone pull that up for me, and we'll print it out and give it to you.
Okay, so, but we personally, as we were passing this board bill, we didn't do anything ourselves, so it's whatever the Post-Dispatch said. Is that correct?
Sometimes common knowledge is common knowledge. We know, and you know, and I know, and everybody in this room knows that most of the municipalities in St. Louis County already were paying more, and not just a small amount more.
Well, sometimes for me, common knowledge is not so common. Like, I think most of us were shocked when we found out that common practice of overtime with the police department. That was not common knowledge. The problem with common is who is it common amongst. It's a common amongst the police, it's common knowledge among the members of the Board of Aldermen, so I don't take anything as being common knowledge, because that's the whole thing about doing a salary comparison. When you do a salary comparison, there are a lot of things that go into a salary comparison. There is the base salary, there's shift differential. Do you have a take-home car policy, which I understood that they finally stopped because they were letting the police take home cars. When we started that, it was supposed to be so our citizens would feel safe, but it ended up people were able to take home cars to Illinois and to the county. What's about the mileage? Who pays for it, when they took it home all of this time? This whole thing about the overtime most certainly comes into play. Who pays for uniforms? How many do you get? What insurance is part of the take-home? Do we pay insurance? Do they? I just found out that the police are paid to take a physical, whether they pass or not, but they get more if they pass. How do we do this, okay? When we give benefits, are these benefits put on the W-2 form? If so, which ones and how much? When we let officers have secondary employment and they get to wear their uniforms, is that counted as a benefit? Are they required to have secondary insurance when they are working secondary employment? What happens if they get hurt on the secondary job? Who pays for unemployment compensation? All these kind of things go into your benefit package when you're putting a package together of how much money. I hear oftentimes about how we don't pay enough, and that probably is rightfully so. That's also for teachers, firefighters, and a lot of city workers. We could even talk about that with the members of the Board of Aldermen compared to other aldermen in other cities. But the problem is that we are constrained with the budget that we have here in the city of St. Louis. So when we come to talk about someone police making more money in another segment of the metropolitan area, and we don't really bring out and compare all the other benefits that we may be giving to people that they may not be getting in other places, we don't have a fair, complete analysis of the compensation package. And that's when I hear that the only such analysis we have is something that was in the Post-Dispatch, and that I hear that it's common knowledge that we know that we pay less than everybody else. That's not common if we don't look into the other practices. I want the police to make a decent salary, but we've already made so many compromises that the police, when they get to be a certain a time in the city, they leave anyway, okay? I think that we have set it up wrong from the beginning, and what we have is occupational policing in the city of St. Louis. I've been here long enough when we used to have 8 stations, I believe it was, and then we said we'd like 8 stations, so the police, under Clarence Harmon, when he was the mayor, went ahead and made super stations. That did not increase policing, it made it harder for policing. Then under the last police chief, Dotson, we went to bigger districts and got rid of some districts. That did not increase good policing. In fact, if you have a ward that has any part of what's called the 6th district, you range from Chain of Rocks to down to Grand. That's impossible to get to cover that amount of land and do good policing. We don't have community policing. We talk about that. We've never had it. So then we come back and say, well, we just got to pay them more. They often hear people talk about teachers. Teachers knew how much they were going to make when they became teachers. Same thing with police officers. Same thing with members of the Board of Aldermen. I don't love that phrase, but when everybody's having to take a chunk from their budget and have their budget cut, and then we hear, well, they're just going to leave. I would prefer to find people who want to be part of our solution than to keep trying to open the checkbook and pay people more and more and more, and we just don't have the money. And we're not getting the services. So maybe certain areas are getting the services that they want and think that it's doing a great job. We're not getting the services, and so it makes it harder. And I can remember when the former alderman from the 21st Ward talked extensively about when he asked Chief Dotson if we had enough police, and he said yes. And then here it comes years later, we don't have enough police. And now the county has done a raise, and now we're trying to match what the county has done. I don't think we can. And even if we could, I would not be supporting any kind of police tax raise at all until we can see equal policing all over the city. The first thing that the police should be doing is, I would say, Acting Police Chief O'Toole is get rid of that thing that Sam Dotson did, in which they made the 6th district so huge. You make it dangerous for the citizens, and you also make it dangerous for the police who try to police that area. It is too much, and we're asking too much of the citizens. We're going to tax ourselves right out of existence if we keep doing this. Some of the highest taxes that we have all over the country are in some of the poorest areas, and you cannot compete that way. You cannot just keep telling the citizens they have to pay more. If we're going to do that, I think we need to go back to when the people in the mayor's office made $25,000 a year, because we used to have that. We need to look at some other creative ways instead of asking the people to keep taxing themselves. And I hope that the people in my community, and they've been very good about this, will not support tax increases upon themselves, because we have been told over and over and over, if you just support this tax increase, if you support that tax increase, that we will get more policing. And we have not got more policing, more community policing. And most certainly, when the sponsor of the bill tells me, well, we haven't done a comparative analysis of the pay between what the city makes and the county, and we didn't take all things out and look at all the things that go into a compensation package, we should not be asking the people to tax themselves. And for that reason, I rise in opposition of this board bill.
We also have the mayor who has joined us today. Let's give her a round of applause. Alderman from the 12th.
Thank you, Mr. President, members of the board. I know the policemen that do work secondary jobs, the person that's hiring them to do that is responsible for their insurance if they get hurt on the job. I agree with the alderman from the first. Redistricting was the most dumbest thing that the former chief created. The other thing is, we don't have enough policemen. I live in the 1st and 2nd district, covers my ward. And let me tell you, from 3 to 11, 11 to 7, if I have 5 or 6 cars working that night on a weekend, I have a lot. And there's a lot more calls going on out there. People complain they don't get there fast enough. People complain they've called them, they haven't showed up in an hour. Well, watch them calls that come in. Ride one time. When shift change comes, there might be anywhere from 4 to 15 calls stacked that haven't been gotten to yet. And I'm sure, you know, my ward and area down there, people in my area pay a lot of taxes, and their hollers not police. They say they don't even see them drive around. In some cases, it's true. They're busy tied up in other wards in the 1st district. I do believe we need more policemen. I think we need to utilize them better. I'm hoping whoever this new chief is, you know, sits down with all of us and reorganizes and puts some priorities together. We don't even have a gang unit in St. Louis City. We don't have a vice squad. We wonder why things are happening because police aren't allowed to do their jobs anymore. We're tying people up with protests. They have to follow them around. So you have 3 or 4 cars tied up. They should be on the street answering calls. The bottom line is, it's not correct, but starting salaries in St. Louis County will become approximately $53,000 a year. That's starting salaries. 5 years on as a county policeman, you'll go to approximately $60,000. A 10-year police officer in the city doesn't make $60,000. So we have to either reorganize, get things done, and you know, I'll guarantee you we have less than 1,000 policemen actually on the streets. The former chief had a lot of these special units, and that's what they did. So every weekend when there's all these special events going on, they would pull policemen from districts to go cover that and leave the district short. So if you want to know what's going on, that's what's going on. So we have to do something. So that's where I'm at, and that's my perspective, and I ride in every ward in the city of St. Louis. I can tell you what goes on everywhere. Thank you.
Alderman from the 4th.
Thank you, Mr. President and members of the board. Mr. President, can I add a floor substitute whereby the 4th Ward opt out of paying these taxes and being involved in this at all, because we're not getting service at all. What the taxes that we're paying right now, we're not being serviced for. When I have Ashland and Newstead got 30 to 40 people standing on the corner, when I got the Maffett killers in the 4300 block, 30 and 40 of them standing in the middle of the block, when I got the gang, the 44 gang who blocks the street off, I got all these problems and I see no police. So we would like to opt out of this altogether on the floor substitute. Thank you.
All right, thank you, Alderman.
I know it's not possible.
Yeah. All right. Any further discussion? Any further discussion? Alderman from the 7th.
Thank you, Mr. President, members of the board. As we sit here today debating whether or not to put a tax increase to the voters, this is again another perfect example for why we need more regionalism. St. Louis County acted first. They jumped. They put it to the voters, raised taxes to help fund vital public safety programs, including police officer pay. And now here we are, half a year later, trying to do the same thing. I rise today in support of this board bill with a caveat and with an amendment that I'll be offering shortly, the copy of which is on all of your desks. This board bill, and we've heard from my colleague from the 8th and from the 12th, this board bill attempts to fix a problem. It's a step in the right direction of raising officer salaries. It doesn't get us all the way there, though. If we were really serious about this, we should be talking about perhaps a 1% sales tax. I'm not going to offer that amendment today, but if someone else wants to, I'll vote for it. Basically what we've got here is, if we pass this as is, we're talking about a roughly $6,000 increase in salary per officer. With the amendment that I'm about to offer, we'll be talking about a roughly $10,000 increase per officer. That still doesn't put us at parity with St. Louis County. Many of us, all of us, have obviously serious issues with crime in our neighborhoods. And police are just one part of the solution, right? We've got issues with mental health. We have obviously issues with poverty. And we can't solve all those today. What this bill helps to address is police pay, and that was the primary purpose. And when we're selling this to voters in the fall, it's going to be primarily about getting the police officers a raise. And talking to my constituents, that's what they're interested in. They're interested in retaining and recruiting more police officers. And the way to do that is to increase their pay. And so with that, I move to offer Amendment 1 to Board Bill 60, Committee Substitute, a copy of which is on everyone's desk.
It's been moved by the Alderman from the 7th, seconded by the Alderwoman from the 19th. Alderman from the 7th, please discuss.
Thank you, Mr. President. So the amendment you see on your desk is a pretty short amendment, pretty easy to understand. What I'm proposing to do here is to amend the Exhibit I, on page 4 of the board bill, and simply add the words in the first column there, after the words police department, add for personnel pay raises only. For personnel pay raises only. This would mean that, in the other exhibits, the $12.8 million would go towards those salary increases, which would equate to roughly $10,000 per officer. And again, as I stated before, this still doesn't get us parity with the county, but it gets us a step closer. And now I'd be remiss if I didn't mention that, yes, there's obviously another cost associated with a salary increase. There are pension obligations, right? So there will be an incremental increase in the pension costs, and this amendment doesn't address those, and I'm well aware of that. But also, I'm well aware that a beat cop who's 1 to 5 years on, who's thinking, or a recruit who's thinking about whether or not he's going to stay in the city or go to St. Louis County, he's not looking at his pension. He's looking at that salary, and that's where we need to see the increase. It needs to be in that salary. These guys are thinking in short term about how they're going to provide for their families, and that's based on their salary, not a future pension benefit. Now, I certainly understand and have talked to the mayor, and she's expressed her concerns with the pension situation in the police department, and that's going to be a much bigger conversation, and that's going to be something that everyone down here at this board is going to have to take very seriously, because, frankly, what's going on currently is not tenable. So my commitment today is let's pass this as amended, with the proposed amendment I have, and then let's come back in our next session when we're after break, and let's have a very serious and frank discussion about pension benefits for the police and for other departments. With that, I'm happy to answer any questions on the amendment, and I would ask for your favorable consideration.
Alderman from the 8th.
Mr. President and members of the board, I rise in opposition of this amendment. This amendment is a reflection of how we've gotten here today, that we're always going to come back, kick that can down the road. Now, the problem with this amendment is it puts everything in salaries and doesn't account for the other benefit costs. And then that's going to be a reoccurring cost that we haven't accounted for in the city's budget this year, next year, or the next 20 years. again, all you're doing is kicking that problem down. We don't have a lock on what that number is, you know, how much extra pension, how much other benefits, Social Security, all of those things that we have to pay out as this goes up. Now, we're all for parity, but we have to have the ability to keep this in line. I know that it's $6,000, $6,500, however it's going to come out on an average. I've never said that we're going to match St. Louis County. The key thing is that we're going to continue to be competitive. We're going to demonstrate to the men and women of our police and fire departments that this is a serious matter. We have their interest in mind, and that we have the interest of our constituents, as I hear you talk, in mind. But this amendment is part of the bigger problem that we have here in the city. Everything's growing. We're not accounting for that expense, and we can't tie the hands of this administration or this budget and next year's budget to an unknown that we know is growing exponentially. And therefore, I would be opposed to this amendment because it's not fiscally prudent, because we haven't addressed how we're going to cover those other costs. Thank you.
All right, thank you. Other one for the 19th?
Thank you, Mr. President and members of the board. I stand in support of this amendment. There are a couple of things that we need to reflect on. You see, we can talk about you don't get service, but we know you do. We can talk about what the pay is or may not be in the county. We know it's much higher than the city, has been, always has been, and will be even higher come next year. But one of the things you need to talk about is you need to give a commitment. You need to give a commitment to this police department, and I'm talking about, because we know it's parity, and I'm talking about the fire department too. We've been down this road before, and the money wasn't used properly. I want to see this. I want to have a guarantee to them. That's the least we can do. If you want to talk about retention, if you want to talk about respect, if you want to talk about now, these police officers can expect something definitely. You see, when you put money in a general fund, that money can be moved around and used at will, as it has been in the past. We've been in trouble with paying pensions before. We've been in trouble with all of it before. And until we decide, and I keep saying this over and over again, until we decide that we're going to sit down, work with our budget, make sure line item things are there appropriately, and approve an appropriate budget, you can never know where your money is being spent, where it's being taken from, because you see, at the end of the day, you've given away your privileges for money to be moved around without the Board of Aldermen. So you got a lot of work to do. And what we need to do is to give a guarantee.
We have some order. Please proceed, Alderman.
I am giving my pledge to this police department. I am going to stand with you. I'm going to support you. I'm going to support the fire department and EMS, because without you, you can talk about what you don't get, but without you, you're talking about something that you don't even want to see on any kind of film or movie with 3D, because it will be just that bad every day on our streets. So I commend you for what we get done, but we have got to step up to the plate and make sure that we give you more and that we support you. Right now, I think we're down 115. We got to do better. We got to show people that we mean business, and I want to give them some kind of guarantee that this money does not drop into the general fund and disappear. Thank you.
All right. Before we move forward, it's my understanding that another amendment has been passed out, marked Amendment Number 1. If you have an amendment and you have it written up, pass it out. Do not put an amendment number on it. I will tell you what the amendment number will be once we get to that point in the agenda. So Amendment Number 1 simply states, Alderman from the 7th, please state what amendment number 1 states. Just these three sentences.
Amendment number 1, as I've proposed, simply states to amend said board bill, page 4, Exhibit I, Table 1 as follows. On page 4, Exhibit I, Table 1, after the words Police Department, insert with the same category cell as follows, quote, or in parentheses, for personnel pay raises only. My amendment is very short, for personnel pay raises only.
Yeah, and that's amendment number 1. Any other amendment that you have on your desk other than that does not have an amendment number yet. I will give it a number once we get to that point. Alderman from the 3rd.
Thank you, Mr. President, members of the board. I am in support of the amendment and in support of the board bill also. I think it's important that we point out that being a police officer, no, I'm not a police officer, but I'm sure other police officers, well, not I'm sure, I've heard them say it and met a lot of police officers. I don't think it's all about the funding. There are a lot of police officers who are not in the on the police force just for the money. And when it becomes all about the money, you forget about the community, which is, I think, right now we have a disengagement with the community versus the police department. It's about a working relationship. We all have to work together. I support anybody that will come to my house and try to protect me and my family on a phone call who I may not know. And we all have our issues within whatever job we work in, and everybody would be raising their hand first for a pay raise. But the police department in general, we all have called them before. We all absolutely need them. Sometimes not as much as we need each other, but we need them. They are the people who help keep crime together and really control our city. So I rise in support of them, but at the same time, as far as the taxpayers, it is important that we make sure money is allocated to the correct place and is being used in the correct manner. I also want to point out that this funding isn't only for the police or the fire department. There is money allocated also for the circuit attorney's office. Right now, we are backed up by thousands of cases. We cannot put a whole lot of people in, who, if we had more officers and we did get them out in the streets right now and they were to get out and lock up a bunch of individuals, they could be back out on the street within the next month or two because we are so backed up. It's important that the circuit attorney, which is the new circuit attorney, and the mayor, everybody has a chance to work out their actual plans in which they think they can work best within the capacity of their jobs. They have to work together. We all have to work together, and the police have to feel comfortable and have to feel like they're being properly compensated while being out in the streets. So they're going to, continue to go out there and just do, and I don't want to say anything bad about the Metropolitan Police Department, but sometimes we call and they just do a drive pass. You might not want to get outside when it's 15 people out there on the block and you only getting paid X amount. I'm not getting shot today. I understand that. We have to start looking at the issues both ways. We have to look at what they absolutely need versus what they want, and what we absolutely are doing versus what the county is doing. We're not, I don't think, in competition with the county. Our problem is we're in competition with our own city. No matter how much you raise the pay, if you raise it by 20 grand, you're still gonna have people who have a better chance of coming home at night to their family to be able to spend that money. And that's what it's about. In the county, you're gonna get home in St. Peters. You're gonna make sure that you come home in St. Charles, and the police there don't deal with the exact same issues that we deal with every day. If there's a homicide in my neighborhood, the past month, every 2 or 3 days, which is crazy. They have to deal with those things. I'm sure it's depressing mentally, and it takes a toll on them physically at the same time. So, we have to look at what they go through, and we also have to look at what we go through as the citizens making those phone calls and not getting the responses that we need. Sometimes we do make a phone call, and it takes 10 or 15, 20, 30 minutes for the officers to get there. We are short. Well, we have to look at ways in keeping the officers that we have, because right now, like a few aldermen stated, we only have 4 or 5 aldermen. 4 or 5 police officers per ward sometimes when we make a phone call. So it takes a while for them to get there and respond. So the more we lose, the more of a problem that we have in the city, and the more police officers won't want to come to the city because it looks more chaotic. We have to do some damage control and do what we can to contain. So once again, I'm in support of it. I also am in support of the amendment. I think we need to be paying more attention and auditing a heck of a lot more. There's no way a lot of the things that we've talked about should have been going on for the last few years. That's on us. It's not on the police department. It's not on the chief. It's not on the individuals, the personnel. It's on every single person who has an opinion about what's going on in our police department. This is not the police department on their own. This is not the Board of Aldermen on their own. We all work in conjunction with each other, so let's stop pointing the finger and do what we can do to work cohesively. Thank you.
All right, thank you. Alderman from 24th?
Thank you, Mr. President. Will the Alderman from the 7th yield to questions on this amendment?
Alderman from the 7th will yield for questions to the Alderman from 24th.
Yes.
Alderman from 24th, please proceed.
Struggling with this amendment because obviously it makes sense. We pass a tax increase. It's primarily to make sure we're paying police department competitively. So you're trying to, put a belt and suspenders on that. I understand that. However, salaries are also supposed to be negotiated. And when we require that 100% of the funding going to the police department go to salary increases, it's not going to, at that point, be possible to really negotiate from equal footing, right? Employer versus employee. Employees are going to know the salary increase is guaranteed. And we have state law that requires pay parity between fire department employees, police department employees. So your amendment, it's not just guaranteeing the increase goes to all salary for police department employees. It's also going to guarantee that the fire department, all of that increase is for salaries as well. So it's going to put us kind of really on the back foot in terms of negotiating salary and benefits, both with the police department and the fire department, because you've locked in these increases that are now not negotiable.
I would say that my amendment only speaks to that first box under the police department. Now, obviously, yes, there's pay parity here, and you'll see on table 1 of Exhibit I that the fire department stands to receive 28% of the revenues raised by this tax. But my amendment specifically refers to the salary increases for the police department, to just clarify that they are for pay for salary only.
But correct, that's what your amendment says, but because of state law, in effect, your amendment is also saying 100% has to go to police department salaries and 100% also has to go to fire department salaries.
Point well taken.
This amendment by itself needs its own fiscal note, because the roughly 10,000, this is round numbers, but if we're talking a $10,000 increase in police department salaries and a $10,000 increase in fire department salaries for every employee, that has a huge impact on both pension systems that we have no idea what that impact is. And except that we know it's substantial, and it's a substantial cost to the city. Your amendment says, great, apply the money to salaries. What your amendment doesn't say is who's going to get dinged on the other side to fund the pension systems. Whose salary is going to get cut? Who's going to get laid off in some other department? What city division is not going to get funding because we got to take that money to then backfill the increased, as the salary goes up, our pension costs go up to backfill the increased pension costs. So while this is one of those things, it sounds, it's just a sentence. It seems easy. It seems like, oh, let's make sure we're providing clarity to taxpayers. You are opening up a can of worms that provides a ton less clarity to our budget division, to all of these other city departments. I mean, you're not going to get any argument from me that we need to pay police officers more. No argument at all. And we should pay, and we have an urgent need to raise salaries. However, your amendment does a heck of a lot more than just guarantee salary increases. It is going to guarantee for decades immediately, because this is going to go into effect right now. This changes the whole pension calculation right away.
To be clear, this is not going to go into effect right now. This is going to go into effect if it passes here, if it is third read and final passed, if it is signed by the mayor, and if it is approved by the voters in November.
Okay.
So no, this is not going into effect right now,
Right, I
or even
understand.
in the near term.
I understand it's clearly the near term. I understand not this second, but I'm talking next year. They're going to come back and they're going to do a new assessment of the pension system, and your amendment is going to make the pension system underfunded immediately because they calculate those things 30 years out. And now you're saying we have to pay all police and fire employees this much extra all the time. We know those salaries will stay higher with no corresponding funding source for the pensions. So this amendment, which purports to support police and fire department salaries, undermines both police and fire pension system, which is not, that's not just like, that's real. And that's money we're going to have to come up with from somewhere else, and we don't know where. And it will have a direct impact on some other part of local government, and we don't know what it is. I mean, I would actually, point of order. So
Please state your point of order.
this amendment has a fiscal impact to the city that is, I'm not joking, is possibly in the hundreds of millions of dollars. Just this one sentence, long term. How can we vote on this amendment when we have literally no idea what the fiscal impact to the pension systems are if we approve this? I mean, it seems wildly irresponsible to, in effect, now be underfunding the pension systems by tens, hundreds of millions of dollars over 30 years and not know what that figure is. Shouldn't we know? I mean, is this amendment in order according to our rules if we require a fiscal note for the bill, but then this amendment radically changes the fiscal impact of the bill? It radically changes it. I would contend this is out of order, not just according to our rules, according to the law, city law that requires a fiscal impact statement with every bill. We don't, if we include this amendment in the bill, we do not have anything close at all to an accurate fiscal impact statement for the pension systems. And that is no joke. That is important stuff. We spent months fighting about this stuff in the past, months poring over like minute details about how they calculate the pension system. And this just blows all of that out of the water. And while I think the intent is not bad, the reality of this is vastly different. So while I support the bill, I would encourage us to think very carefully about this amendment because there are unintended consequences buried in this amendment that will cost the city tens of millions of dollars in the short term. That will have an immediate impact on our budget next year. And somebody's going to lose there will be people at City Hall losing their jobs if this amendment passes because we won't be able to afford them because we will have to make additional pension contributions. So think hard about this one. It's a lot more complicated than the Alderman from the 7th makes it out to be.
All right, thank you. Alderman from the 14th.
Alderman from the 7th yield for questions.
Alderman from the 7th, we yield for questions to the Alderman from the 14th.
Yes.
Alderman, please proceed.
My question is, one, I support the prior Alderman's position on this. We need to be fiscally responsible as far as allowing benefits and salary. I would be remiss, I think we all would be remiss if at some point a 30-year patrolman retires to find out his pension's been reduced because we allocated all this money for salaries and forgot to allocate money for pensions. So have you thought about how we can do this, amend it to allow for salary and pensions?
There were some discussions on that and ultimately couldn't reach an agreement. I mean, my conversation with the police department and their union have been frank, and they're willing to come to the table and discuss their pensions. I mean, I think everyone realizes their pension costs are continuing to escalate, and where they're headed is not tenable. This amendment simply it seeks to address the salary, that entry-level salary. You know, we're trying to recruit and retain officers, and we're having a hard time doing that, and the parity with the county is making that problem even worse.
But
So
we need to remember that salary is not isolated to the dollars you take home. It's the
Right.
dollars you put away for the future and the dollars you put into your benefit package that makes people look at a job in a way that benefits them. And I think that, you know, if we do this and we do not allow for that, I think we are fiscally irresponsible in saying, oh yeah, we'll give it all to you in salary, but when the patrolman after 30 years retires and finds out his benefits aren't what they thought were to be, I think we should be held accountable for that also. Thank you.
Alderman from 25th.
Mr. President, I would also like to ask the sponsor of the amendment, my colleague from the 7th, if he'll yield for questions.
Alderman from the 7th, will yield for question to the Alderman from the 25th.
yes.
Alderman from the 25th, please proceed.
Alderman, so during your opening remarks, you know, for the amendment, you mentioned that, you know, this will have a, you know, impact on the potential, you know, costs associated with our pensions, which has been discussed at length at this point. But am I hearing clearly that you're willing to negotiate, you know, to reduce the pension benefits for the police department? Is that your position?
That's my position, yes.
So you believe that we should reduce pension benefits for our police officers?
I think we have to have a very
So
serious
I just wanna
conversation
be-
about, yeah,
Okay,
and I'm
thank
standing here offering an amendment that has their support to increase the salaries.
So thank you for answering the question. I realize that this has the support of the POA to increase the amount of pay that's going directly into, you know, a paycheck. But as someone who, you know, worked, you know, down here at this board during the time that we were going through firefighter pension reform issues, let me tell you, it is not easy looking firemen or police officers in the face and having conversations with them about having to take away their retirement benefits, you know, or even not take them away, reduce them. You know, we never took any, you know, benefit directly away, but we did reduce the benefits. Those are not easy conversations to have. And, you know, frankly, this is, I think, putting us in an even more precarious situation because we're increasing our fiscal responsibility, you know, not only in terms of pay, because, you know, we are, you know, going to pass, if we pass this, it goes out to a vote of the people. If the people pass it, then, you know, we're giving our police officers and fire department increases. But then, you know, if we pass this amendment, you know, then we have to come back to the table with yet another way to either reduce the benefits that are going into the retirement plans, which, you know, sure, the POA will tell you right now that they're willing to sit down and have a conversation with you about it. But, you know, in reality, when you get to the table, you know, they're going to be fighting for those benefits. That's their job. And respectfully so, that is their job, to fight for benefits. And so I'm here to tell you, as someone that just lived through that a few years ago, you know, I'm dealing with reform of our firefighter pension systems. It's not easy, you know, and it's certainly not a comforting position to be in either. You know, I think that this amendment is fiscally irresponsible. You know, my colleague from the 24th, you know, I agree with you. I don't know if it's even legal that we pass this without a fiscal note associated with it. You know, so I rise in opposition of this, not because I don't want more money going to police officers, but I think we're doing as balanced of a job as we can with the current bill to make sure that we're giving increases while also covering the associated costs of those increases, particularly as it pertains to benefits. And so, you know, I rise in opposition of this amendment. Thank you.
All right, thank you. Alderman from the 16th.
Thank you, Mr. President. I have a statement in staunch support of this amendment, and for the following reasons: that I believe this provides certainty and specificity to pay. And that is not only what constituents that we all represent and the residents of our first city like to see, an overwhelming, simplified transparency, that this money goes specifically to salaries. Often, and far too often, we are met with the challenge of fungibility and flexibility in the general revenue fund. I think that frustrates various departments, particularly the police department. And that is why I think I have full support of this amendment, because I think being over-specific is exactly what provides certainty to these officers. And that's what this amendment does here today. Furthermore, it forces a tough conversation that I think we all need to have around pensions, particularly pensions with the police and the fire departments. So let this amendment force that tough conversation. And to say that we have unintended consequences with this bill, that's for sure. We have unintended consequences with any bill and with any amendment, and that is what we're elected to do. That is elected to have those tough conversations around unintended consequences. Governing is prioritizing. We are prioritizing and saying, officers, we want this pay specifically to go to your salaries. But let it be known that we are going to then have to have a very frank conversation around the pensions and the fallout thereafter, as well as the city departments.
All right.
Thank you.
And to the question of the amendment requiring a fiscal note, we require a fiscal note for a bill. We do not require a fiscal note for amendment to a bill, but one could be requested between now and that third reading calendar. Alderwoman from the 15th.
Thank you, Mr. President, members of the board. I also rise in opposition to this amendment, and I do so as a daughter of a public employee whose pension was gutted when he was 20 years vested. My father is now 67 years old and cannot retire because of the changes that were made to his pension after already working for a public university for 20 years. I think that we are muddying the water. I do not think that it's very difficult to explain to voters that this is for salaries and benefits. People understand that. They understand that the two go together. And I think that this is setting a very dangerous precedent. We already set the dangerous precedent when we went after the firefighters' pension. We're getting ready to set another dangerous precedent by going after the police officers' pension. Then where does it stop? Do we go to other public employees? Yes, we have a looming pension crisis here in the city, but we have a responsibility to workers who have put in the blood, sweat, and tears for this city to hold good on our promises. And this amendment will make it very difficult for us to hold good on those promises and just be setting us up for needing to go back to the voters, find yet another funding stream to fund pensions or else gut those pensions. So I am in staunch opposition to this. And I think that we just need to look at the ramifications that this could have on people who have put in their time in a system and what this could do to workers in our city.
All right. Alderwoman from the 1st.
Board, if the Alderman from the 7th would yield.
Alderman from the 7th will yield for question to the
Yes.
Alderwoman from the 1st. Alderwoman from the 1st, please proceed.
Alderman, you may have said this, but we had a little noise going on, so I couldn't hear everything that was going on. When you proposed this amendment, was your intent is for personnel pay raises only, strictly pay raises?
Correct.
And when you were doing that, what was your mindset or what was your thought process about the rest of the benefit package? Because I will agree with the Alderman from the 16th. We are going to, at some point, whether people like it or not, we're going to have to address those pensions.
Right, right, and I welcome that discussion, and this amendment will certainly, if passed, force everybody to the table to have that discussion sooner rather than later. No, I think I was clear when I offered it that yes, there's going to be a pension increase associated with devoting this money specifically to salaries, and we have a chart that I think is probably on everyone's desk that addresses that number. I think there's some question as to whether the pension amortization amount of $2.5 million is accurate. Is it really that high? I don't know. There is a footnote on that.
Are we supposed to have some kind of chart? Which chart are you talking about?
Oh, I don't know. This is a chart from the mayor's office. It was on I think it's on everyone's desk. But yes, there is certainly some increase in pension costs associated with this, an incremental increase that we will have to find the money to fund.
Okay.
But to sell to the voters are expecting a salary increase. That's what we're going to be asked to sell them. That's what the police are going to be asked to sell them. And I think we owe this to the voters for clarity.
Is there any concern on your part that if we just give it now, so if we put this money all in a salary, are you expecting that we will use it every year for whatever we get for salaries, or is some of it to be put aside for later salaries? How do you envision this
I
working?
expect this money from this sales tax to go towards salaries. I mean, you've been down here a while, a lot longer than me, and you've seen how many times where we've passed taxes that we've thought were for one thing and then they wind up getting shifted and used somewhere else.
Oh, I agree.
Right.
I can tell you all about how we got that fire training station.
Yeah.
But
and that's what I'm seeking to try to avoid with this amendment.
But I'm saying that it's not your anticipation that whatever we collect all has to be used for salaries right then and there. It could be used for later salaries, for negotiating. So we wouldn't just say if we got $5 million in this year, that's what we have to pay on salaries. That's not your anticipation, right?
Well, I mean, any salary increases are going to have. I mean, they're going to have to negotiate. You know, what officers get what salaries, and that's up to. You know, that's above my pay grade.
Okay. So my next thing, did you take in consideration if we just do salaries and we increase that? Will this affect people who want to get the big salaries and then leave the St. Louis Police Department anyway? Do you think that your amendment affects that? Maybe I'll come and get the big salary, then I get out of here.
Well, I mean, we talk about a big salary. We still won't be at parity. A starting police officer still will not be at parity with St. Louis County. So no, I wouldn't call what we're proposing here to be a big salary.
All right, thank you. I appreciate it. Mr. President.
Please,
Mr. President, members of the board, I'd like to know if the Alderman from the 24th would yield.
Alderman from the 24th, will yield for questions to the Alderman from the 1st.
So, sure.
Well,
Please
sit down and get up. So, Alderman, I heard part of your concerns about that we need to make sure that the money is used for a lot of different things, and we still have to deal with our pensions and other. Because I heard someone say that everybody knows that we're really talking about salaries, but I think when we're talking about a raise, we're talking about a complete package is what I think that you're talking about. And some things we see and some things we don't even know exist. In addressing this thing about salaries versus pension and other things, is it your anticipation that sometime we're going to have to address this pension issue that the big giant gorilla we have in this room as you oppose this?
Yeah, but I've been hearing that for 6 years, you know, and Missouri law is pretty clear on what we can and can't do with police department pensions, and so I'm not particularly optimistic that anything we're going to do in the short term is going to have a significant impact on what we need to do to fund the police pension system. I mean, nothing we're going to do in the short term is going to substantially decrease our obligation there, because we can't change benefits people have already earned. That's illegal in Missouri, and we're going to have to negotiate whatever changes we want, most likely through the SLPOA. And I don't think they have any particular incentive to accept any drastic reductions for.
And we also at this
new
point can't
employees.
change that. We have to do matching with the police and the fire, right?
Exactly. The pension systems are not linked, but the salaries are linked. And so when we increase police salaries, we have to increase fire salaries. And when we increase fire salaries, we have a bigger pension obligation for fire department employees. So that's my point.
And is it your understanding that sometimes in negotiation with these things, we may not give bigger salaries, but we give other benefits that people think are just as important? Is that your understanding?
Of course, right? I mean, so salaries are important, and it's a hot topic right now, but I would think that you'd at least want the flexibility for the police allocation to be negotiated between salary and benefits, right? Maybe it's working conditions. Maybe it's, you know, health insurance. There are other things besides salary that might be important to employees of the police department, and we're kind of presuming here by passing this amendment that it's just all about salaries and nothing else counts. And I don't know that that's the case.
Thank you. I appreciate it. I have no further questions.
Alderman from the 24th.
I wonder if the Alderman from the 16th would yield to
Alderman
questions.
from the 16th will yield for questions to the Alderman from the 24th.
Thank
Alderman
you.
from the 24th, please
So
proceed.
I want to go back to this idea that, well, we can do this now, and we can have a tough conversation about the police pension system later. How is the police pension system governed right now?
How is the pension system governed right now?
Yeah.
The police department's pension system?
Yes.
It's controlled by the state, is it not?
Sure, right, exactly. State law controls existing employees' pension system. And that was a big deal when the local control ordinance statute was written to ensure that when the city got local control of the police department, we did not get the ability to change the pension system, especially for existing employees. And on top of that, Missouri law and case law is very clear that you cannot reduce benefits that employees have already earned. So the best we could ever do with the police pension system is change benefits for new employees. That's the best we could do.
Correct.
So I think it is, quite frankly, naive to say we can pass this amendment, we can have a huge salary increase, and then we can deal with the pension repercussions of that in some, difficult conversation later. We can't. We don't have the legal authority to reduce, to increase salaries here and say, well, we can just reduce pension benefits at the same time. We don't have that legal capacity to do that. So this amendment ties our hands to say we have to increase salaries, and then we're going to have to, by law, also increase those pensions by a commensurate amount. And that impact, I'm telling you, it's not, it's tens of millions of dollars in the short term. And if we also have case law that says if we don't make those contributions, if we underfund that system, case law says we have to fund it. And we can't take some years off and say we'll fund it in the future. We have to fund it on an annual basis. And if that means like next year we'll have an increased pension obligation to fund, the only place to get that funding is from money that is paying for other stuff right now. Right. And as we know, there's not all that much other stuff, right? We can take rec center funding away. Mm-hmm. We can lay off police officers. We can take money from capital improvements. But the point is, we're going to be pulling from somewhere else, and it's gonna mean we're doing less stuff that that residents want us to do, or we're laying off people or furloughing employees because we need that money to put into the pension system. It's happened multiple times in the last 15 years, and we're just teeing ourselves up for that to happen again. So we can just leave the bill, police department, salaries and benefits, that is enough, and let us negotiate on all those points so that we're not putting ourselves into a corner that we literally cannot get out of fiscal year 2018, 2019. We're going to be very sorry in the future if this amendment passes. Thank you.
Any further, Alderman from the 12th?
Members of the board, I'll try to answer some of them questions for the alderman from the 24th. First of all, if we can't bring them to negotiate their pension, we can always put a sunset clause through that says next year we will be not collecting sales tax money. There's an out there. Also, the St. Louis Police Association has the authority to go to the state board down there and let them know they're renegotiating their pension costs. And I've double-checked that with the association. Here's third of all. Y'all thought it was the greatest thing since peanut butter and jelly to get the police under city control. But the reality is you're paying an extra $5 million a year. So where's the savings? Where's the savings from the fire department? Jeff Rainford told me they'd be broke in 2 years if we didn't change the pension. I think we're doing okay. But I'll agree about a lot of things. We need to get our priorities in order. I mean, it seems like the rec sing fields are running the show down here. And the next thing we hear is about privatizing the airport. So we'll be in for a roller coaster ride there. But the bottom line is we'll be responsible for maintenance and upkeep on there. So we need to get our priorities in order. You know, let's quit getting these lawsuits about statues that shouldn't be removed and belongs to somebody else, wasting money there. Let the proper people get it. So the bottom line is, I go to neighborhood meetings and they're willing to vote for the half cent, but they want to guarantee that the money's going to the police. I am not going to support this and lie to them like we've done on a lot of other bills. So, you know, the latest one being, if you want to continue getting your trash picked up twice a week, it's going to cost more money. Tell the people the truth. It's once a week now and 1 day a week for recycling. That should have been said from the very beginning. But this is the problems down here. We all want to support things, but we can't get everybody on board. And we just waste a lot of money down here. And I'm guilty of it. I voted for some of it, a lot of it. But, I mean, it's time we do something. I have not seen one savings from the firefighters' pension or the police department being under city control. And if anybody can tell me there is, I'll match wits with them. I talked to the budget director, and I'll say this and be quiet. Well, we saved money. We had the police running the city marshal's office. Really? You took 2 policemen off the street and put them in an office. So if you call that a savings, you know, I'm Skippy. Thank you.
Any further discussion? Any further discussion? Any further discussion on amendment number 1? Alderman from the 7th, you recognize the close on amendment number 1.
Thank you, Mr. President, members of the board. I renew my motion on amendment number 1.
All right. Our clerk had to step away. Oh, she's back. Perfect. Madam Clerk, please call the roll on amendment number 1 for Board Bill number 60, committee substitute. It was moved by the Alderman from the 7th, seconded by the Alderwoman from the 19th.
Alderwoman Tyus. Alderwoman Flowers. Alderman Bosley. Alderman Moore. Alderwoman Hubbard. Alderwoman Ingracia. Alderman Kotar. Alderman Conway. Alderman Gunther. Alderman Vollmer. Alderwoman Martin. Alderman Arnowitz. Alderwoman Murphy. Alderwoman Howard. Alderwoman Green. Alderman Oldenburg. Alderman Rhodey. Alderman Kennedy. Alderwoman Davis. Alderwoman Spencer. Alderman Muhammad. Alderman Boyd. Alderman Vaccaro. What was that?
Yeah, aye.
Alderman Ogilvie. No. Alderman Cone. No. Alderman Williamson. No. Alderwoman Boyd. President Reed.
Aye.
Alderman Bosley.
Yes.
Alderwoman Hubbard. Alderman Gunther. Alderman Kennedy. Alderman Muhammad. Ten aye votes, 15 no votes.
By a vote, you fail to sustain the motion. Alderman from the 7th, amendment number 1 fails. Alderman from the 22nd?
I move for adoption of amendment. I guess you will give me an amendment number?
Yeah, let's call that amendment number 2.
Okay, I move for adoption of amendment number 2 to Board Bill 60, committee substitute. It should be on everyone's desk.
Okay. It's been moved by the Alderman from the 22nd. Entertain a second on that motion. Seconded by the Alderman from the 21st. Alderman from the 22nd, please walk us through amendment number 2.
Sure. Amendment number 2, basically, if you would go to the last page of the board bill where you see exhibit number 1, is to amend said board bill stating exhibit number 1 as follows. The proceeds of the half-cent public safety sales tax are intended for these purposes and the portions outlined in table 1. In addition, the proceeds of the corresponding increase in the use tax paid by businesses out of state purchases, which is linked to any increase in the sales tax, are intended for the uses and the proportions outlined in table 2. What I'm asking is that we remove the $975,000 from the public defender's office. Number one, the public defender's office is a state agency, and I don't think it's reasonable to ask our taxpayers to send the state almost $1 million for a job they should be doing. That is a job of our state delegation. That is when we need to be calling on our state senators and our state representatives to advocate for more money in the public defender's office. We should not be spending our thinly stretched resources to fund a state agency, especially a state that really has no real love for the city of St. Louis. And I'm advocating to move $300,000 of that $975,000 to the circuit attorney's office, bringing it from $1.2 million to $1.5 million, and also adding, in place of public defenders, building demolition, creating $675,000 additional dollars for building demolition. Mr. President, members of the board, building demolition has almost become a passion of mine. In the 22nd Ward, I have over 400 buildings that are owned by LRA that are officially condemned. I have over 400 buildings owned by private entities that are officially condemned. Currently, we passed a board bill number 1, that only allocates about $300,000 for building demolition. That would be about, maybe at best guess, 125 buildings for the whole city of St. Louis. I think it's reasonable, I think it's fair that we get back to at least $1 million, which is still 2/3 short from what we promised the voters in 2002, but before I became a member of this board. But it was a great sale when the use tax was created. It was supposed to be $5 million for affordable housing, $5 million for healthcare, and $3 million for building demolition. In the past decade, we have not seen $3 million. When we had $3 million for building demolition, there was rapid demolition across the whole cities. Now you can go through every, the second, well, not maybe the second as much, but the 1st Ward, the 3rd Ward, the 5th Ward, the 4th Ward. I think we rank the top in derelict buildings, slum and blight in our neighborhoods. And it's a travesty to our constituents if we cannot have at least near $1 million for building demolition. I think it's a reasonable request and I ask for your favorable consideration.
All right, any further discussion on amendment number 2? Alderwoman from the 1st.
Mr. President, members of the board, I rise in opposition. As a former public defender, I know the importance of someone who's able to defend people who have no one else to defend them. My first case I ever had as a public defender, as a felony case, I believed my client to be guilty. We didn't have a lot of money in the public defender's office, so we had to go out and a lot of times you had to do your own, even though we had investigators, you had to do your own investigation. And within a very quick amount of time, I found out the young man was not guilty. But what happens in the public defenders is that oftentimes you are overwhelmed. We say this thing about innocent until proven guilty, but many times, if you don't have enough money for someone to represent you, you do not get the treatment of innocent until proven guilty. In fact, when I started doing my investigation, I went out. There were people in my office who said, you're spending too much time on that. They offered you a really good deal, just go ahead and take it. It was a 6 months not to report, which is basically you're guilty, and it's a SIS, so it won't go on your record if you walk your probation down. But the fact of it is the young man was innocent. And so he was able, because I was able to do the investigation and put a little time into it, oftentimes not getting paid, the young man didn't get a record. I understand the alderman from the 22nd Ward talking about we need building demolitions. Most certainly, I agree. I only get 5 to 10 a year if I get that many, and usually they don't get to all of my 10 if they give me 10. I've been told I get 5 or 7 or whatever, and they're always right next to people who have really nice houses, and I see them tearing down buildings next to nothing and ignoring the people who live in a house and got a building next to them. We are stretched, and yes, the state should fund the public defenders, I think, equally to what we fund the circuit attorney's office, because here's the thing that happens. If you fund the circuit attorney's office so they can prosecute, because that's what we think, oh, crimes are being committed against us, and so therefore we want to fund the circuit attorneys. But here's a little thing that happened when I was a public defender. We were so overwhelmed that we walked out. The public defenders went on strike, and they said, we will lock you up if you go on strike, and we all walked out, and the courts came to a screeching halt. You cannot operate without the public defenders. You cannot, I see the Madam License Collector shaking her hand over there, because she was a public defender. Ronnie White, federal judge, public defender. The courts cannot operate without the public defenders. And it only takes one time for you not to have any money and to be falsely accused to know how important it is to have someone that you can call your attorney who looks out for you. So I know the Alderman is frustrated, but this $975,000 that you want to take from the public defenders is a drop in the bucket. We often had to go and buy our own things to be able to represent people. I still get together suits and things that I will take over from my husband, and ties, because we'd have to bring suits and ties and things to put our clients in suits so that they could appear to get before the judges as a citizen instead of looking at them as just an indigent. Whereas we're getting ready to bring forth some board bills about homelessness, but we also need to know about people who are falsely accused. Let it be your brother, your sister, your cousin, any one of them that's falsely accused and your family doesn't have any money. What we're saying is that only the very wealthy deserve a defense. That is not what we should be about. In the public defenders, we used to have something on our door that said it's better to set a guilty man free than to incarcerate or hold and find a innocent man guilty. And we have to remember that. People are innocent until proven guilty, but if they have no right or no way to have somebody represent them, somebody to advocate for them, if they don't have any monies and all we're doing is funding more the circuit attorneys at the expense of the public defenders, you are incorrect. I know the Alderman cares about building, but there are citizens in his community that use this service, and they need that service. And you only have to talk to one or two of them to know that this is not something that should happen. We should I agree we need more money for building, but not at the expense of the public defenders. That is not, and then to move more of it to the circuit attorneys just doesn't make any sense. He talks about that we ought to make our state reps and state senators be more productive in making sure we get enough money. In that case, they could say the same thing to us about hospitalization. We're supposed to really be running hospital that we don't do. There are a lot of things that you are charged with in the charter or the state laws that people don't do. You make decisions. Whoever made this decision about the public defenders, I don't know who it was, I want to commend them. It is needed. It is a mistake to take it out of this board. And I think if you talk to anybody that's been a public defender, just bar none, you will know, just don't have this conversation with just me. Talk with the license collector. Talk with Ronnie White, who's a federal judge. Talk to other people who have been public defenders. Judge David, who sits on the bench. Kaya Stovall-Reed, who's a judge. Judge Paula Bryant, before she was the secretary, was a public defender. It is so important that we have both sides, that we have someone who represents people who can have someone that advocate for them. And this is a wrong-minded amendment, and I hope that you will not proceed with this. And I stand in opposition of this.
Any further discussion? Alderman from the 7th.
Thank you, Mr. President, members of the board. I rise in opposition to this amendment and in agreement with the Alderwoman from the 1st. She listed a long list of fine St. Louisans who started their careers as public defenders, and many of them have gone on to do great things, and public defenders have some of the hardest jobs in government. You know, they're overworked, underpaid, understaffed, our public defenders here in the city in particular. This amendment would strip money from this proposed use tax and send it to building demolition, which is also a worthy cause. But I think there's probably, and I don't have the numbers in front of me, I'd be willing to wager there's more cost savings to the city in providing this small increase in funding to the public defenders, because right now we've got a very large population of folks incarcerated pending felony criminal charges here in the city. If we can get these folks moved to the system faster and either onto the Department of Corrections or out of custody, that will ultimately save money for the city. We pay, I want to say, roughly $80 a day to pay for folks incarcerated here in the city. Now, if they're ultimately convicted, the state reimburses a portion of those costs, but not the full cost. You know, having additional resources for the public defenders will help move those cases faster, and I think also, more importantly, help provide justice. So I stand in opposition to the Alderman's amendment and encourage my colleagues to vote against this amendment. Thank you.
Alderman from 21st.
Thank you, Mr. President. I rise in support of Amendment Number 2. When you look at our city and everyone wants to talk about crime, the only way to stop crime and prevent crime is to fully fund the Circuit Attorney's Office. And also, with this amendment, increasing the Circuit Attorney's Office budget to another $300,000, which is definitely needed. She needs to upgrade her office efficiency, she needs to hire more attorneys, and she needs better paid staff. But it also gives more funding and allocates funding to building demolition. I have 1,966 vacant buildings in my ward. I guarantee you that out that almost 2,000 some, maybe 500 are not condemned. This is a great bill, and I will hope that all my colleagues support it. This is what we need. The CA office is underfunded. Although we have a public defender's office, that's a state problem. That's a state issue. While I respect Alderman from the first ward, I think that we need to go to the General Assembly and they need to write that check in order to fund an office for them. If we fund the Circuit Attorney's Office more, then we won't have a higher need for the Public Defender's Office because we have diversion programs, we have more community engagement, and we have different measures set in place that will stop crime and they'll also stop high-risk offenders on the street. I applaud the Alderman from the 22nd Ward. I think this is a step in the right direction. I am definitely in support of Amendment Number 2.
All right, thank you. Any further discussion? Any further discussion? Alderman from the 22nd, do you have something before you close? All right, Alderman from the 1st.
I would like to reply to what the Alderman from the 21st said. You could fund the Circuit Attorney's Office 5,000%. There will always be a need for public defenders. There will always be a need for both sides of an issue. You have to have both sides. I did not know that because I grew up with the police, and I did not understand how prosecutorial I was until I went to the public defender's office. And I would invite any of you all who have never done that to go and sit and see what these people do and watch. The people that you're talking about, that's the state's problem, are our residents. They live in our communities. They're the people who call me up and want me to represent them because they know I'm a lawyer and they want to see if I can come back to the public defender's office and represent them on something. It is absolutely crucial that you have it, because even if you fund the Circuit Attorney's Office 500% more, you're not going to be able, the process does not work for you to get things through without a public defender. So if you don't have lawyers on both sides working and being able to appear in court to make pleas or to be able to represent the people, I don't care how many circuit attorneys you have, you are not going to have the process work. As I said before, when we walked out, every circuit attorney showed up. They couldn't do a thing without the public defenders. So you need both. It's like having your right tire without your left tire. And if you don't practice law, you might not understand that. But the minute that we walked out of that building and went on strike, and we had a bake sale right there at the building next to us, everyone understood the importance of the public defenders. I am in no way denigrating the Circuit Attorney's Office, because they are people who need to be prosecuted. But we have a constitution that says you have a right to be represented too. And when we're not able to represent our people, then what they get is end up taking pleas for things they didn't do, which affects African American young men. they're in the system and it affects them for their life, okay? So we need people who are willing to say, no, let's take this to trial. Let's make sure that you just don't take a plea for no reason. It affects young, poor white men. It affects them for the rest of their life. As we put these people in the system and we don't even give them an attempt to have a fair trial, it is a mistake. We get so focused on everybody's guilty. There are very, very many people that are innocent that are in this process. And if we don't give them a chance, shame on us.
Alderman from the 22nd, do you have something prior to your close? All right, Alderman from the 21st.
Yes, sir. Just for clarification to the Alderman from the 1st Ward, I am not saying that we don't need to fund the Public Defender's Office. What I'm saying is that in a city where every dollar we have to stretch, where we have a city that has been fiscally irresponsible, we have to fund the offices that we actually control and that can actually stop crime, and that's the CA's office. While true, the highest clientele for the Public Defender's Office is African American men, especially in my age group. The problem is, if you have a circuit attorney who understands the social ramifications of today's time, or who's not going to prosecute young black men to the fullest extent of the law, but they understand that certain things happen in certain circumstances and situations, if we have a circuit attorney who understands that, then there is no reason why she's going to go into a courtroom or direct her assistant circuit attorney to go prosecute a young man for having a bag full of dope or a bag full of marijuana, but because she understands the social ramifications of today's time, and she also understands that there's an economic piece missing in the city of St. Louis where young black men get involved in crime, get involved in drugs, or anything else. So when you have a circuit attorney and you have a circuit attorney's office that is sensitive and conscious of the problems that's going on in North St. Louis and throughout the city in general, then there is no reason why we should fully fund a state office that the General Assembly should fund. That's just my personal opinion. We have to support the circuit attorney, and that's what we don't do. The only person that's responsible for keeping dangerous offenders off the street is a circuit attorney. That's not the police department, that's not public defenders, it's a circuit attorney. And in my ward, especially where crime is above the national average, I'm concerned with crime. And the circuit attorney is the only elected official responsible for stopping crime and making our communities safer. So that's why I support the amendment. No way am I saying we should not fund the state defender's office, but it is a state office. We have a Missouri General Assembly that needs to come in and help out. We have several state representatives and we have 2 state senators. I think we need to reach out to them and ask them for a little bit more help on an office that they control and that's overseen by state authorities. Again, I am in support of amendment number 2.
Alderman from 26.
Yes, Mr. President, members of the board. I think the Alderwoman from the 1st Ward and the Alderman from the 22nd are making very, very good points, very valid points. You know, with my constituents, I get a lot of complaints about vacant buildings also, and the deterioration of some of our neighborhoods, which is an unsafe problem to have in our community. But at the same time, dealing with our attorneys and the caseload that we have, we need to move that. And very good point, we need to support, you know, our Justice Center. But at the same time, I think we need to hold our state reps and our state senators accountable for really funding the Public Defender's Office. And I think that needs to be done more often when it comes to funding them, because that is a state department. So thank you.
Alderman from the 15th. Alderwoman from the 15th.
Oh, sorry, I thought you were looking that way.
Yeah.
Looking there, saying my name, sorry. Thank you, Mr. President, members of the board. I just wanted to throw out there, I mean, I think both of these are very important things, but I would just like to add that we have another bill that is before this body, Board Bill 61, that creates community benefit agreements that does have a fund in there for building demolition. And so, while I think this is an important thing, I think it can be handled in another bill.
All right. Alderman from 3rd.
Thank you, Mr. President, members of the board. Just like to appreciate my colleagues. Everybody is making an effort to do something productive in the city. I think at this point in time, we need to be looking more at increasing things opposed to cutting everything. Our city isn't working at its fullest capacity right now as it could be. I personally have friends and know plenty of people who have been in the wrong situation at the wrong time and made one bad choice. And their mothers and fathers don't have funds. They don't have the resources to make a phone call, even use a phone to call around and look for lawyers. So I think public defenders are extremely important, regardless whether it be in a state office, regardless of where it is. Right now, we have a duty to uphold to the citizens of St. Louis to look out for their best interests. And as this board, I don't think it'd be looking out for everybody's best interest. When we talk about crime, we're talking about somebody's grandson, somebody's granddaughter. We're talking about somebody's child versus a building right next door, something that can always be replaced. You know, life cannot be replaced. Once you get yourself in this system, that's it. You know, this isn't made for you to get out of. It's not made for you to be able to sustain and be a full member of society after you get caught up in this system. So it's important that you have a fighting chance for every ounce of your life moving forward off one bad decision. And the public offenders are the people who help. They are the ones who aren't working against the people who don't have adequate support. So, you know, I rise. We of course need money for Kim Gardner and the Circuit Attorney's Office. And I remember meeting with her, and she asked for you know, about $800,000, $900,000. We're giving her, I think, a nice amount, and I think she can do some great things as time moves forward. But I think reducing the amount of people that we have, or just cutting the people that we have out here representing the underprivileged people in these communities, man, would be a bad thing. You'd have a lot of individuals who will end up without families later on down the line. Like right now, we got a lot of our young men locked up and in jail and don't have the capacity to get a good job because they made a mistake at 18 years old and didn't have, once again, the adequate representation to be able to get themselves out of that one situation. So, you know, we need the public defenders. We need this office. Of course, they need to be paid. They need to be funded. Yeah, those are my remarks.
Thank you. Any further discussion? Any further discussion? Alderman from the 22nd, you recognize the close on amendment number 2.
Thank you, Mr. President, members of the board. Certainly, by no means to cut the public defender's portion out of this bill suggests that I don't care about people who are in need of public defenders. What I'm suggesting is we're out of our lane. It is not our responsibility, period, to fund a state agency. Let me remind everyone who can remember when we voted for the lottery with the state. Oh, we give us lottery, we're going to give, you know, education all this money, and we're all excited, especially those who have kids in St. Louis public schools, about getting this huge infusion of tax dollars, millions of dollars. Well, what the General Assembly did, yeah, they put 100% of the money in education, but they took that $500 million or what it was out of the general revenue fund that used to fund it. We are setting a dangerous precedence if we start funding state agency, because what will happen next year or even this year through another appropriation, the state can easily take that $975,000 away from the public defender's office and fund the Department of Revenue or fund whatever particular department. Because if I was at that level and I'm strapped with cash, hey, St. Louis, you want to support our agencies? Great, I appreciate that. Now I have an extra $1 million. Thank you very much, citizens of St. Louis. I don't think that's the right choice to make. I think we owe it to Ms. Johnson, that's been sitting next door to the left and right of 2 derelict buildings that needed to be torn down 5 or 6 years ago. We owe it to them. I've heard about the other board bill to give. We can't put enough money into building demolition. And having about $1 million or $2 million still is not enough. And with that, Mr. President, I will close. Thank you.
All right, thank you. It's been moved by the Alderman from the 22nd, seconded by the Alderman from the 21st, that we adopt amendment number 2. Madam Clerk, please call the roll.
Alderwoman Tyus, Alderwoman Flowers, Alderman Bosley, Alderman Moore, Alderwoman Hubbard, Alderwoman Ingracia, Alderman Kotar, Alderman Conway, Alderman Gunther, Alderman Vollmer, Alderwoman Martin, Alderman Arnowitz, Alderwoman Murphy, Alderwoman Howard, Alderwoman Green, Alderman Oldenburg. Alderman Rhodey. Alderman Kennedy. Alderwoman Davis. Alderwoman Spencer. Alderman Muhammad. Alderman Boyd. Alderman Vaccaro. Alderman Ogilvy. Was that a? Alderman Cone. Alderman Williamson. Alderwoman Boyd. President Reed.
Aye.
Alderman Moore. Alderwoman Hubbard. Alderman Conway. Alderman Gunther. Alderman Arnowitz. Alderwoman Howard. Alderman Kennedy. Alderwoman Spencer. Is Conway here? Alderman Conway, your vote? Thirteen aye votes, 10 no votes.
By a vote, you sustain the motion, Alderman from the 22nd, and adopted amendment number 2. Now what's before us is the perfection of Board Bill 60 Committee substitute as amended. Alderwoman from the 6th.
I just wanted to rise in support of the notion that we need to be making sure that our first responders are taken care of here in the city of St. Louis. Having a police force and a fire department that are being paid fairly and equitably makes sure that our residents are taken care of at a level that they deserve. I am concerned about the our ability here to keep throwing back on the taxpayers the burden of increasing our sales tax when there are other more creative options for generating revenue here in the city. In St. Louis City, people living in poverty pay 10.6% of their income on taxes, and 5% of that alone is sales tax. I've been trying to figure out, sitting here this morning, how many times we've raised our sales tax. Citywide, I believe it's about 4 or 5 times, and no telling with respect to adding TDDs and SIDs on top of that. I'm also concerned because Governor Greitens has not yet signed Senate Bill 49, which authorizes us to increase our sales tax. Prior to May of this year, we were not able to do that at all. And so I think we need to be very careful about the laws we're passing down here and asking voters to weigh in on when he hasn't signed the law and still has the potential to possibly veto it. And so I think we need to be very careful when we keep imposing regressive and not progressive taxes here in the city. Thank you.
Thank you. Any further discussion? Alderwoman from the 15th.
Thank you, Mr. President, members of the board. I'd like to echo a lot of the things that the Alderwoman from the 6th just said. I'm always going to stand up here and support higher wages for employees. My concern is the way that we are going about doing this is an incredibly regressive tax when we just imposed another sales tax or voted to impose a sales tax back in August. If this passes, that means we will have raised sales taxes by 1% in a year, which is a lot to put on folks in this city. Just for an example, folks in my community have also gotten hit with some other taxes. We had an average assessment increase of 34% in the 15th ward this year. So our property taxes went up by 34% year over year. I have folks who are calling me right now who are on fixed income, who are elderly, who are not sure that they can afford the taxes on their houses anymore in the 15th ward. These are people who own their homes outright, but are now getting $3,000 or $4,000 a year tax bills. we have to be cognizant of the burden that we are putting on our most vulnerable populations in this city. The other thing we need to, I think, put into perspective is what's been happening at the state level. So many of you know that Governor Greitens signed a budget last week, and that budget included $250 million in cuts, and most of those cuts are aimed at hurting people in lower economic income stratus. So for example, we cut $30 million from the Department of Social Services, which is supposed to be healthcare assistance for low-income folks. So we're asking folks to pay more for everyday expenditures, while we're also taking away their access to healthcare and their ability to pay for healthcare. So how can we ask for you to pay more for your healthcare and pay more for, living expenses every single day? Governor Greitens also ended the prescription drug assistance copay program, which used to help low-income folks who even did have insurance but couldn't afford the deductibles or the copays to be able to get the medications that they need. Again, if we're imposing yet another sales tax, we're making it even harder for low-income folks to be able to get everyday necessities. Governor Greitens is also currently looking at a tax on groceries. He has not implemented this as of yet, but yet again, this is another way that would disproportionately hurt low-income folks in our community. So what we see right now is we have attacks that are happening on low-wage workers from our state government, where the governor is rolling back the minimum wage in our city, which is going to put even more people back into poverty. As the alderwoman from the 6th Ward said, low-income folks, people under the poverty level, are paying 10.6% of their income on taxes in this city right now, and 5% of that is on sales taxes. So although all of us, I think, support higher wages for our first responder, we have to ask, at what cost? Are we going to be taxing people who have the least ability to pay and asking for them to fund a police force that, by and large, has not done a good job of building trust and relationships with our low-income communities? To me, I don't think that is fair, that we are asking those who have the least among us to bear the burden of this cost. I also think that we are acting out of an urgency that does not exist. Yes, Proposition P was passed in the county. It doesn't go into effect until January 1st, which means it doesn't start collecting revenue until January 1st, which means that revenue from that is not going to be collected until months after that. So although we have this urgency to raise salaries, to make them competitive with the county, I think that we also have to take into consideration, we also have to ask ourselves why we are pushing this so fast, and have we done the due diligence to really make sure that we're not passing something that is going to hurt more low-income folks in our community and just create a greater income divide. I shared a couple of articles on people's desks that are just good kind of academic studies about how sales taxes create an even greater income disparity between the rich and the poor in our community. When we're talking about income inequality across this country, from the local level up to the national level, we have to also talk about sales taxes. And that means we also need to get creative as a city with the types of taxes that we are implementing. It seems like we are always here ready to go ask for the poorest among us to be the ones to buck up before we decide to go after business, before we decide to put taxes on luxury items or things to make the most well-off among us pay more than the least well-off among us. And so is the alderman from the 8th still here? Yes. Would the alderman from the 8th please yield for questions?
Alderman from the 8th, will you yield for questions to the alderman
Yes.
from the 15th? Alderman from the 15th, please proceed.
Thank you. I'm just curious, besides a sales tax, what other funding mechanisms did you look at?
Just historically, over the years, is that there's a cacophony of ways to generate revenue. The most important way to raise revenue for the city of St. Louis is increase the number of people that are coming into the city so that we can generate the various earnings taxes. The other board bill that I have sitting in committee still is Board Bill number 58, and that is to remove the exemption for the not-for-profits from the payroll tax.
Thank you. So did you look at any payroll taxes that did not impact nonprofits specifically?
What was the question?
I said, did you look at any payroll taxes that were not targeted just at nonprofits?
Yeah, well, you look at all of the payroll taxes and all of the tax structures throughout the whole committee process.
And so what was the rationale that a sales tax was the best mechanism to implement to fund police salaries?
Well, there was two companion statuses. If you can appreciate, and I know I spoke at length last week, that the not-for-profits own about 24% of the property. Other cities, similarly situated to us, have negotiated pilots. Now, every city has a different revenue stream premised on different things. Long story short, the ability to raise that half cent was available for that, and we have a new mayor and a new direction, and that was one of the things that was important to her. I moved ahead with removing the exemptions on the payroll tax, which would have generated about $12 million a year, and that's something that's out there, but hopefully between the comptroller and the mayor and the president, they'll begin in the short run, or if they don't, begin earnest conversations about payments in lieu of taxes.
Thank you. I guess one other question relating to kind of the sales tax piece. Are you aware of how, as you were talking about other cities and looking at other cities, if we pass this, where will our sales taxes be in relation to other cities?
Well, tentatively, because of the metro tax, our overall local rate will be 9.6 in October. Then if this passes, it will climb up to 10.1.
Correct.
That is not that far out of line. Like I said, if you understand, like, government anywhere in this country has figured out how to tax people. Like people say in Florida, we don't have an income tax because they milk the tourists. Or in Texas or Alaska, they got oil and they collect. The government, no matter where they're at, or in Nevada or whatever, they don't have an income tax. They have lower rates because, they get it from the tourists. I mean, there's different, government is figuring out how to get money to run themselves. I'm not a big fan of that. But the menu board that's available to us is payroll tax, pilots, and sales tax here. And we already collect the payroll tax, except that initially they exempted the not-for-profits.
Thank you. No further questions. I do want to, I agree that our tax rate will go to 10.1%, but the alderman from the 8th didn't completely answer my question. If this passes, we will have the third highest sales tax in the country. We will have the third highest sales tax in the country. I think we need to be cognizant of that. When we are dealing with all of these issues regarding poverty in our community, with the Forsake of All report showing the disparity between those who are the richest and those who are the poorest among us, are we really at a place where we want to have our namesake be that our way of getting revenue from our residents is to tax the least among us? I don't think that's a reputation that we want. I do also thank you for pointing out that there are other revenue options available. Cities like the alderman from the 8th, cities are really good at finding creative ways to impose taxes. And yes, Florida does, milk their tourists, and that's great for them. But there's also a number of Midwestern cities just like us that are doing something different, that are doing something called a commuter tax, which is a payroll tax. which is more equitable. 68% of the people who work in the city of St. Louis do not live in the city of St. Louis. If the county got us into this mess by raising taxes there, isn't it more equitable for us to be asking for the 68% of people who work in this city and live in the county to be paying to increase our officer salaries rather than asking the most or the least well-off among us to bear that burden? So with that, there is a floor substitute on your desk. It is Board Bill 60, floor substitute, that I would like to move to have before us so we can discuss a payroll tax, a half of a cent payroll tax that would generate $48 million a year, which would be more than the sales tax generates and more than enough to raise officer salaries and fund pensions.
All right, Alderman, for the 15th, you're making a motion to introduce floor substitute for Board Bill 60 committee substitute.
Point of order.
It's been a point of order. Alderman from the 8th, please state your point of order.
First of all, this bill is not germane to the sales tax that's before us. I looked at the floor substitute. It's a totally different subject matter, different tax. It also, if it had been adopted, would make the bill duplicative of Board Bill number 58 in the committee. So since it's not germane to the topic that's before us, the public safety sales tax, I object and raise my point of order.
I find your point of order well taken. Alderman from the 15th, if you'd like to introduce this as a board bill and have it go to committee, I think that would be appropriate. But our rules, Rule 36, explicitly states changing a bill. We can amend a bill, but not to the extent of changing its original intent. And Alderman from the 8th and his bill, that was to collect a sales tax for public safety.
I'm going to ask to overrule the chair. It is the same subject matter because we are dealing with wanting to fund the exact same functions. We're just asking to change the funding mechanism.
You have every right to challenge my ruling. So are you asking to overrule the?
Yes.
So you're going to make a motion to do that?
I would like to make a motion to overrule the chair.
It's been moved by the Alderman from the 15th. Entertain a second on that motion. Entertain a second. Seconded by the Alderman from the 6th to overrule the chair on the issue of floor substitute for Board Bill 60 committee substitute as amended, being out of order because it's talking about a completely different tax and it changes the bill materially from the original bill, which is in violation of Rule 36 of the Board of Aldermen. A vote in the affirmative will overrule the chair's decision and go with the alderperson from the 15th. A vote of no will support the chair's ruling and move us past this floor substitute and back to the original bill. Again, a vote of no supports the chair, a vote of aye supports the Alderwoman from the 15th. Madam Clerk, please call the roll.
Alderwoman Tyus, Alderwoman Flowers, Alderman Bosley, Alderman Moore, Alderwoman Hubbard, Alderwoman Ingracia, Alderman Kotar, Alderman Conway, Alderman Gunther, Alderman Vollmer, Alderwoman Martin, Alderman Arnowitz, Alderwoman Murphy, Alderwoman Howard, Alderwoman Green,
Aye.
Alderman Oldenburg, Alderman Rhodey, Alderman Kennedy, Alderwoman Davis, Alderwoman Spencer, Alderman Muhammad, Alderman Boyd, Alderman Vaccaro, Alderman Ogilvy, Alderman Cone, Alderman Williamson, Alderwoman Boyd. President Reed.
No.
Alderwoman Tyus. Your vote is? Present. Alderwoman Flowers. Alderman Bosley. What was that? Alderwoman Hubbard. Alderman Gunther. Alderman Onowitz. Alderman Kennedy. Alderman Muhammad. Alderman Cone. Alderman Williamson. Alderman Williamson. Two aye votes, 20 no votes.
By a vote,
One present.
By a vote, you failed to sustain the motion on Alderman from the 15th. So Alderman from the 15th, per our rules, you can stand up in a little bit and be recognized again, but if there's someone else that's ready to be recognized, we have to go to them according to our rules. Alderman from the 6th. Oh. Any further discussion? Any further discussion? Any further discussion? Alderman from the 8th, you're recognized to close.
Thank you, Mr. President and members of the board. And I know that it's been a long morning here in a lot of different gyrations. The commitment that I needed to demonstrate, and I appreciate all of you bearing with me and demonstrating to the men and women of our police and fire department, is that we are addressing a serious issue. And I know that the alderman from the 7th had an amendment, the alderman from the 22nd had an amendment. The one thing I can say to the men and women at our police department and the fire department is that once we give you whatever that first raise is, to be competitive, not match, with St. Louis County, I can't take it back. So that what the alderman from the 7th had is not as important, in that I'm not going to be able to take it back from you. So the direction that we want to move, and all we're asking today, is to put this on the ballot in November. And I realize down here everybody has a different view on how we're going to do different things. But none of us represent a ward where people aren't concerned about public safety both today and tomorrow. And that's why I believe the voters are intelligent enough in the city of St. Louis to make this determination, and let's put this on the ballot in November. Thank you, Mr. President.
It's been moved by the alderman from the 8th, seconded by the alderman from the 23rd, that we perfect Board Bill number 60, committee substitute as amended. Madam Clerk, please call the roll.
Alderwoman Tyus. Alderwoman Flowers. Alderman Bosley. Alderman Moore. Alderwoman Hubbard. Alderwoman Ingracia. Alderman Kotar. Alderman Conway. Alderman Gunther. Alderman Vollmer. Alderwoman Martin. Alderman Onowitz. Alderwoman Murphy. Alderwoman Howard. Alderwoman Green. Alderman Oldenburg. Alderman Rhodey. Alderman Kennedy. Alderwoman Davis. Alderwoman Spencer. Alderman Muhammad. Alderman Boyd. Alderman Vaccaro. Alderman Ogilvie. Alderman Cone. Alderman Williamson. Alderwoman Boyd. President Reed. Alderwoman Hubbard. Alderman Gunther. Alderman Kennedy. Alderwoman Spencer. Alderman Williamson. Aye votes, 4 no votes.
By your vote, you sustain the motion of the Alderman from the 8th and perfected Board Bill number 60, committee substitute as amended.
Board Bill 83, sponsored by Alderman Conway, an ordinance authorizing the execution of a contract for sale between the city and MCB hotel owner, prescribing the form and details of said agreement, making certain findings with respect thereto, authorizing other related actions in connection with the contract for sale, and containing a severability clause.
Alderman from the 8th, you recognize on the perfection of Board Bill number 83.
Mr. President, I move for perfection of Board Bill number 83.
Moved by the Alderman from the 8th, seconded by the Alderwoman from the 19th. Any discussion? Any discussion? Alderwoman from the 1st.
Mr. President, members of the board, if the Alderman from the 8th would yield.
Alderman from the 8th will yield for question until Alderwoman from the 1st.
Yes.
Alderman, what is the MCB Hotel and who are the owners?
It's the developer that is going to redo the building behind us. I know we talked about this 2 weeks ago. We walked through the whole project behind us.
I'm sorry, I couldn't hear the end. I know we talked about it and you trailed off. I'm sorry.
I said, no, we talked about it. I'm sorry, I'm looking at my notes, but we talked about it 2 weeks ago. It's the project behind us.
The old municipal courts?
Right.
Okay, and who are the new owners?
Their name is here. I don't know them from Adam.
Okay. So it's kind of unusual you're carrying the bill since the 8th Ward, last time I looked, does not come downtown. Is that correct?
Well, I'm an attorney, so I figured that since it was the Muni Court building, I had the opportunity to exercise.
That is not an answer to my question. My question is this in the 8th Ward?
No, this is not in the 8th Ward.
It's in the 7th Ward, is that correct?
Right, it's the 7th Ward, and the attorney, the alderman, who's also an attorney in the 7th Ward, he has a conflict of interest because I think his firm does work with this group.
And is this just the authorization of the sale? It's not the TIF, right?
Correct.
Is this part of the TIF?
Right, the comptroller negotiated both 83 and 89, those prices.
So 83 and 89 are companion?
Correct.
And what's the difference? I'm sorry, Mr. President.
No, that's fine, I'll keep answering.
Well, no, but I want to, because it's two different board bills, he brought up a separate board bill. Can I follow up with a question since there are two, but the board bill is not before us? Or do I have to wait?
You really should wait on that board bill when it's before us, but thanks for asking.
Thank you very much. So when the next board bill comes up, I'll ask you then what the differences are the two.
Thank you.
Thank you. No further questions.
Any further discussion? Alderman from the 8th, you recognize to close.
I renew my motion.
It's been moved by the Alderman from the 8th, seconded by the Alderwoman from the 19th, that we perfect Board Bill number 83. All in favor signify by saying aye. Opposed? Motion carries.
Board Bill 89, sponsored by Alderman Conway, an ordinance authorizing the execution of a contract for sale between the city and Vertical Realty Advisors, LLC, prescribing the form and details of said agreement, making certain findings with respect thereto, authorizing other related actions in connection with the contract for sale, and containing a severability clause.
Alderman from the 8th, you recognize on perfection of Board Bill number 89.
Mr. President, I move for perfection of Board Bill number 89.
It's been moved by the Alderman from the 8th. Entertain a second on that motion. Seconded by the Alderman from the 2nd. Any discussion? Alderman from the 1st.
President, members of the board, if the Alderman from the 8th would yield.
Alderman from the 8th will yield for questions. Alderman from Alderman from the first, please proceed.
So technically, I'm still out of order because now Board Bill 83 is not before us, but I don't know how you get to the question of asking what the difference in the board bills without asking about one or the other when it's not properly before you.
I think that question would be in order, the difference
right.
between that and
So could you explain, please?
89 is the parking lot, 83 is the building.
Okay, all right. And this, the parking lot was is this something owned by the treasurer's office right now? Is it just a lot or is it
It is not owned by the treasurer's office.
okay, is it a lot or is it a building or what is it?
It's the upper, I'll open my door, but it's the
Is it a
upper
flat lot? That's what my question is.
The upper lot.
Okay, thank you. No further questions.
Any further discussion? Any further discussion? Alderman from the 8th, you recognize the
Mr. President.
Alderman from the 25th.
Mary, might I ask my colleague from the 8th?
Alderman from the 8th will yield for questions to the
Yes.
Alderman from the 25th. Alderman from the 25th,
So
please
this
proceed.
is a parking lot that's across the street from the Scott Trade Center, correct?
Correct.
Is that lot currently generating revenue for the city?
Well, it sure doesn't come to general revenue. That treasurer doesn't give us any money, Alderman.
Okay, well, so are there any bonds that are associated with that parking lot?
There may or may not be bonds associated with what the treasurer did, probably some point time ago, collected up and bundled everything to what they believe was their revenue stream. But everybody is comfortable, in particular the comptroller of the city of St. Louis is comfortable with this transaction.
So, I don't have a copy of the agreement. How much is this parking lot being sold for?
The parking, just the upper lot, is $2 million. And then the comptroller is going to utilize the funds to hopefully build our reserve fund up so that we continue to get a good bond rating.
I'm just curious if there is any type of debt on the lot and it's generating revenue. I mean, $2 million seems like a low amount of money for a parking lot that's right across from a major stadium that brings in hundreds of thousands of people every year.
So it's two things. One is it generates some revenue, but I know that the developers have also taken on any obligation for any proportionate share of debt that may have been dedicated to that site.
So that's explicitly in the contract for sale?
That part I don't know. The thing is, you had the treasurer, who never gives us the funds, dedicate revenue on property that she didn't own. But anyway, long story short, we're comfortable with it. Treasurer's office might be slightly uncomfortable because it may interfere with whatever, but the developer is committed to fulfill any obligation the treasurer might have actually had.
But we don't know if that's in the sales agreement?
And I'm sorry, I'm sorry, a bird is talking, but it is in the agreement. And I remember, we had this all at the committee hearing, but that's my understanding, it is in the agreement.
Okay. All right, thank you.
All right. Alderman from the 1st.
President, members of the board, if the alderman from the 8th would yield.
Alderman from the 8th will yield for questions to the Alderman from the 1st.
It's a long day here. Yes.
You have all
Alderman
these
from the
important
1st, please proceed.
Thank you, Mr. President. You have all these important bills, but I know you're getting tired, but I just want to be on the record, first of all, to saying it's not true. The treasurer gives us money, gives us the state amount, in fact, gives us more than the previous treasurer. And we've had these same conversations about for 26 years. So I just want to take exception to you saying, first of all, treasurer doesn't give us money. But my question is, when you and I were young pups when we came down here the first time and we did a bond, for the parking. In fact, we restricted where we could park. That's why the aldermen can only park in our spots unless they rent it out and get rent. It is my understanding from the treasurer's office that this lot that we're going to sell is bonded out. Is that correct? Do you know?
They wouldn't have the legal authority to use it collateral. I think they're using the income stream as collateral, their proposed income stream. But part of the consideration that the comptroller has negotiated is that the developer, part of their cost will be to pick up anything that is bonded out or determined to be bonded out so that the treasurer isn't out any money.
So the answer is yes, it's bonded out. Is that correct?
There's no collateral.
So what you're saying is it's not bonded out? Is that your answer? Yes or no? I'm trying to get to a yes or no. What is your understanding?
I am sure the treasurer's negotiated the income stream into one of her bonds. But
okay.
So that's what she's, quote, bonded out.
Okay, and so let's use your terms. So the income stream, you are sure that she has put it in one of her bonds. So if we sell this property, you're saying that the new owners would, whatever income stream that we currently have or potentially may have, how is that written up so the new owners would cover whatever amount of money that we were making or will make in the future?
I left some of those details to the fine people in the comptroller's office, but here with the bill, and if you can go ahead, give me a minute. And
I'll give you two, Alderman.
Look at the bill. We should have the contract under my things on my desk. You will have to pull it up. 88, 89, 45, 83, 89. So you have the fiscal note in the whole bill there and the contract. And so you're more than welcome to take a look at that. If you look on page 5, number 5.
Page 5, did you say?
Yeah. So the treasurer, was just making some money off of there. But you can see the developer has agreed to that. Page 5, small fee.
Page 5, I'm sorry, I'm not following. Which seller's fee, which is section 5, which section page? I'm on page 5. Which section?
Okay, page 5, small v or section V.
Small e?
V is in Victor.
Oh, okay. Seller and purchaser have agreed to an amount to reimburse the treasurer of the city for her existing bond obligation pledge revenue on the property. What is that amount?
Treasurer has not been cooperative. Once they come up with that amount, that's what these people have agreed to pay. In the meantime, the city gets $2 million for that lot.
So the city gets $2 million. The people have said a blank check. So if the treasurer can prove that they were getting $2 million a year, that's what they're going to pay? Is that what I'm understanding?
If they can prove it, they get it.
And it's her existing bond obligations for, and how long would this existing bond obligation go on? Do you know? Have any idea?
What had happened was that the treasurer bundled up, and for this purpose, I mean, it's complicated. I know what their strategy is. Bundled up all of their different into one, so that, even though the city owns that, we couldn't do anything with it. Or that, so she thought when she had done that, if that was her main reason. Anyway, that's what it is.
I don't know if that was her main reason because, as I said before, when you and I were young pups, I remember bonding up the parking that we park in to the day that the alderman, and that was a different treasurer, and I don't think he looked forward to 20-something years later that this is the conversation. So I don't know if that was her main ideal or not, and unless you have some information you want to share with us, I would caution you to try to not give a treasurer motive that unless you have some information you want to share with us. I'm looking at C, and I guess this is 1 on page 5. Why are we using a quitclaim deed instead of a general warranty deed?
Well, since I'm the seller, I would much prefer to do a quitclaim deed because then I don't have to warrant the title. But
I understand the difference.
I'm working for the seller, so that's all I know.
I understand the difference in a general warranty deed and a quitclaim deed. What I don't understand is why the purchaser is willing to accept that. Do you have any idea? Because a quitclaim deed only gives you all that I have. So if I have nothing, then you bought nothing. And whereas a general warranty deed gives a guarantee that I have what I'm selling and that I stand behind it, either through insurance or whatever. So, and that's why usually title companies do title searches, and that's why a lot of times with purchases like this, I've never seen people use quitclaim deed. That's why I was trying to find out why there was a quitclaim deed used instead of a general warranty deed. Okay, going to C3, it says, I'm sorry, C2, an affidavit required by the title company to remove from purchaser's owner's policy of title insurance the standard exceptions for unfiled mechanic liens, material liens, or other liens for services, labors, or materials furnished to or created by seller and for parties in possession. What is that? Can you tell me?
Standard real estate practices.
What is it?
Standard real estate practices.
Exactly what does that mean?
Well, anytime you buy a house or a piece of real estate, one of the conditions is that the title company does execute an affidavit, which they actually need to issue the title insurance, that there are no mechanic liens. IRS liens could be anything, ex-spouse lien, hidden whatever. So they have the right to ask for all of those things and get you to execute the things. An affidavit that you don't know, that you haven't done any work there in 6 months, that you haven't paid any workers, you haven't seen any work, but all these affidavits because they're issuing the title insurance. But that's just standard SOP, standard operating, well, SOL, standard operating language.
So we're the sellers, the city. So we are going to have to have an affidavit that there are no unfiled mechanic liens or any such things?
Well, sure.
Okay. All right. And you say that the comptroller put this together, and do we have a legal opinion from the city attorney about if this type of thing that is bonded out, which you decide is another term, is something that's legal to do?
And I'm sorry, Alderwomen. I've got like one more bill to go, and
I understand, but as I recall, I had asked if you would yield, and so you and
I did,
had
and I promise I'll yield. I won't move.
Okay, no, that's not the problem. The problem is the people talking to you behind you while I'm asking questions. Okay, so my question was, do we have a legal opinion stating whether this is legal to do this, since we do have bond obligations on this piece of property?
I don't see, I mean, if someone's got a reason for it, they have a reason for it. But obviously the comptroller didn't feel that that was a necessity.
So we don't have a legal opinion from the city council whether this
I don't have a written opinion.
All right, thank you.
Thank you.
All right. This is for the discussion of the perfection of Board Bill number 89. Do you have something on that? Alderwoman from the 20th.
Thank you, Mr. President. Will the Alderman from the 8th yield for questions?
Alderman from the 8th will yield for questions to the Alderwoman from the 20th. Alderwoman from the 20th, please proceed.
Alderman, does the comptroller support this sale in this fashion? Okay, thank you very much.
Alderman from the 26th, you recognize.
Yes, Mr. President, with the Alderman from the 8th year to...
Alderman from the
Just a
8th,
few
we yield for
More than
questions.
happy to
Alderman
yield
from-
to,
Alderman from
to my
26th,
short
please
friend from the
proceed.
26th Ward.
I appreciate that. Just want to know, for clarification, now that lot is owned by the city of St. Louis, like you stated earlier.
Correct.
Am I correct? So, with the comptroller selling the lot to the new owners, soon be, was it any communication between the comptroller, the treasurer's office, and the particular buyers as far as selling the lot? In other words, what I'm trying to get to, was the treasurer's office ever presented the opportunity to build a garage on that particular lot, even though it is owned by the city of St. Louis?
I don't know if the treasurer had the opportunity to do that. I do know that the final question we asked the employee at the comptroller's office was along those lines, and being a true bureaucrat, he just kind of froze and couldn't give us the full answer.
Okay, and correct me if I'm wrong, I think that the hotel basically wanted 80 spots for rental or for valet, if you know the answer to that. I'm not
I
sure.
don't remember what the testimony was. I'm sorry, Alderman.
Now, are we in agreement, or are we in violation when it comes to retiring the debt of the garages, when it comes to the agreement that we have with the Blues, doing the events, that we sell those spaces on the lot? So are we in any violation, or has it been an agreement reached? Because once we sell that lot for the $2 million, it's gone. We'll never be able to generate revenue from it. And I assume they're going to build a garage, the hotel, which would put us in competition somewhat. And I haven't seen any agreement as far as when it comes to event, where they also sell parking spaces for the Blues event, little kiddie events and concerts that may take place over at the Scott Trade.
Right. I know that they've negotiated with the Blues. The final analysis of what the comptroller, the developer, and the city have agreed to, it seemed to have been acceptable to the Blues. That's all I know. I can only tell you what I know.
Okay, so what you're basically saying, we're probably not in violation, or they agreed to amend the revenue when it comes to the event parking.
Right, and I think we all have comfort in the comptroller. She's not going to allow something that she has to sign off on to not work.
All right. No further questions. Thank you.
All right, any further questions? Any further discussion? Any further discussion? Alderman from the 8th, you recognize closed.
Mr. President, I move, and I'm sorry, somewhere in the stack, I move for perfection of Board Bill number 89.
It's been moved by the Alderman from the 8th, seconded by the Alderman from the 2nd, that we perfect Board Bill 89. There's been a request for roll call. Madam Clerk, please call the roll.
Alderwoman Tyus, Alderwoman Flowers, Alderman Bosley, Alderman Moore, Alderwoman Hubbard, Alderwoman Ingracia, Alderman Kotar, Alderman Conway, Alderman Gunther, Alderman Vollmer, Alderwoman Martin, Alderman Arnowitz, Alderwoman Murphy, Alderwoman Howard, Alderwoman Green, Alderman Oldenburg, Alderman Rhodey, Alderman Kennedy, Alderwoman Davis, Alderwoman Spencer, Alderman Muhammad, Alderman Boyd, Alderman Vaccaro, Alderman Ogilvy, Alderman Cone, Alderman Williamson, Alderwoman Boyd, President Reed.
Aye.
Alderwoman Hubbard, Alderman Gunther, Alderman Honowitz. Alderman Oldenburg. Hold on for 1 second. Alderman Oldenburg, he said abstain. And Alderman Moore, you changed your vote? No. Alderman Kennedy. Are you still going to? Yeah. 17 aye votes, 4 no votes, 2 abstain, 1 present.
By vote, you stay in the motion of the Alderman from the 8th and perfected Board Bill number 89. Madam Clerk, at the request of the sponsor, please place Board Bill 59 as amended on the informal calendar. The perfection informal calendar.
So noted.
All right.
Board Bill number 90, sponsored by Alderman Bosley and Alderwoman Hubbard, an ordinance repealing ordinance numbers 544255, 58949, and 63534, approving development plans and redevelopment plans for the Malamphy Urban Development Area and Montgomery Industrial Commercial Park Industrial Commercial Area in the Madison Acres Plan for the Madison Acres area respectively, and authorizing certain actions relating thereto and containing a severability and emergency clauses.
Alderman from 3rd, you recognize on the perfection of Board Bill number 90.
Yes, sir. I recognize on the perfection of Board Bill number 90. I move for perfection, I'm sorry.
It's been moved by the Alderman from the 3rd and seconded by the Alderwoman from the 27th. Please proceed, Alderman.
This board bill is about pretty much repealing the plans that were enacted in 1966, 1983, and 1995. There were some community development plans about these particular neighborhoods: Malamphy Urban Development Area, the Montgomery Industrial Commercial Park, and the Madison Acres Plan. And those plans have been inactive and were never implemented at all. So we are looking at repealing those, and they're within the geographical boundaries of the NGA. So we're looking at repealing those so we can have a little more leniency.
All right, any further discussion on Board Bill number 90? Any further discussion on Board Bill number 90? Alderman from the 3rd, you recognize to close. Would you like to just renew your motion?
Yes, sir. I would like to renew my motion. Excuse me.
For
I would like to make a motion to suspend the rules.
Oh, no. All right,
Not right
we're
now?
still on the vote on the perfection of it, so just say renew your motion.
I would like to renew my motion.
All right, it's been moved by the Alderman from the 3rd, seconded by the Alderman from the 27th, that we perfect Board Bill number 90. All in favor signify by saying aye. Aye. Opposed, motion carries. Alderwoman from the 19th.
President, members of the board, I move to suspend the rules for the following board bills: Board Bill 63, Board Bill 73, Board Bill 80, Board Bill 88, Board Bill 44, as amended, Board Bill 81, Board Bill 82, Board Bill 83, Board Bill 89, Board Bill 90, for third reading consent count.
All right. Alderwoman, would you please repeat those Board Bill numbers?
Sure.
Thank you.
Board Bill 63, Board Bill 73, Board Bill 80, Board Bill 88, Board Bill 44 as amended, Board Bill 81, Board Bill 82, Board Bill 83, Board Bill 89, and Board Bill 90.
And I'm going to repeat those to you. Board Bill 63, Board Bill 73, Board Bill 80, 88, 40 as amended.
44 as amended.
44 as amended. 81, 82, 83, 89, and 90.
Correction, 45.
Okay, Board Bill 45 as amended.
Instead of something or additional?
Instead of 44, it's
Instead
45.
of 44,
It's
45.
So I'm going to repeat those again. Board bills, all of them from the 19th? All of them? Would the staff and everyone leave, all of them from the 19th? I'm going to repeat those numbers to you again.
Okay.
And I need you. So we have this. Board Bill 60, Board Bill 73, Board Bill 80, Board Bill 88, Board Bill 45 as amended, Board Bill 81, 82, 83, 89, and 90.
Board Bill 63 is the first one,
Yes,
okay?
yes. All right? Or would you just like to remove one of those out of there? Okay. Please remove Board Bill 89 from the list. So what's before us is the suspension of the rules for the purposes of moving these board bills to the third reading consent calendar. Again, I'm going to repeat the motion for you. 63, 73, 80, 88, 81, 82, 83, 90, and 45 as amended.
Thank you.
It's been moved by the Alderwoman from the 19th. Entertain a second on that motion. Seconded by the Alderman from the 22nd. Any discussion? Madam Clerk, please call the roll.
Alderwoman Tyus, Alderwoman Flowers, Alderman Bosley, Alderman Moore, Alderwoman Hubbard, Alderwoman Ingracia, Alderman Kotar, Alderman Conway, Alderman Gunther, Alderman Vollmer, Alderwoman Martin, Alderman Onowitz, Alderwoman Murphy, Alderwoman Howard, Alderwoman Green, Alderman Oldenburg, Alderman Rhodey, Alderman Kennedy, Alderwoman Davis, Alderwoman Spencer, Alderman Muhammad, Alderman Boyd, Alderman Vaccaro, Alderman Ogilvy, Alderman Cone, Alderman Williamson, Alderwoman Boyd, President Reed,
Aye.
Alderwoman Hubbard, Alderman Conway, Alderman Gunther, Alderman Onowitz, Alderman Kennedy, Alderwoman Davis,
Aye.
Alderman Cone, 22 aye votes.
By vote, you stay in the motion, Alderman from the 19th, and move the aforementioned bills to the third reading consent calendar.
That's the extent of board bills for perfection.
Alderman from the first,
I thought we still had another.
Board Bill 89, I'm not sure.
And I
if that-
want to make an objection to it going to the consent calendar. So I would ask for a friendly amendment that it just go to the.
So you would
third
like
reading.
every single one of those bills moved to the regular
we
third
already,
reading
no,
calendar?
no, just 89. I don't want that to go to the consent. I want to.
Okay, all right. I think the Alderwoman has chosen not to suspend the rules on 89. All right. Third reading consent.
Board bills 21, 49, 74, 75, 64, 18, 38, 46, 47, 54, 67, 68, 69, 62, 65, 51, 63, 73, 80, 88, 45 as amended, 81, 82, 83, and 90.
Alderman from the 22nd, you're recognized on the motion for the third reading consent calendar.
Yes, thank you, Mr. President, members of the board. I move for third reading and final passage of the aforementioned bills on the consent calendar.
It's been moved by the Alderman from the 22nd. Entertain a second on that motion. Seconded by the Alderman from the 19th. Any discussion? Madam Clerk, please call the roll.
Alderwoman Tyus.
Yeah.
I'm sorry.
I've already put the vote, so we have to continue.
Alderwoman Flowers. Alderman Bosley. Alderman Moore. Alderwoman Hubbard. Alderwoman Ingracia. Alderman Kotar. Alderman Conway. Alderman Gunther. Alderman Vollmer. Alderwoman Martin. Alderman Arnowitz. Alderwoman Murphy. Alderwoman Howard. Alderwoman Green. Alderman Oldenburg. Alderman Rhodey. Alderman Kennedy. Alderwoman Davis. Alderwoman Spencer. Alderman Muhammad. Alderman Boyd. Alderman Vaccaro. Alderman Ogilvy. Alderman Cone. Alderman Williamson. Alderwoman Boyd. President Reed.
Aye.
Alderwoman Tyus. Alderwoman Hubbard. Alderman Conway. Alderman Gunther. Alderman Arnowitz. Alderman Kennedy. 22 aye votes, 1 present.
By a vote, you sustain the motion, Alderman from the 22nd and third read, and then finally pass the aforementioned bills. Alderwoman from the first.
Well, it would have been a point of order. I didn't hear all of the bills. I was trying to find out what I was voting on when you said.
All the ones that she.
Okay, when you say that, if you would look up, you would see I was standing here, okay? So can I find out what bills we voted on?
Well, the staff will get you a list of those. So can someone get the Alderwoman from the first
and then
list
my
of?
next question, I had given you a list of things that I did not want to be on the consent third reading. Were they taken out? Because
Board bills 18, 67, 68, and 69. I don't believe that those were taken out of the off of the consent
and
calendar.
then I stood, and so now we have a thing of being a consent calendar where I specifically challenged that, okay? And I did it in a timely fashion, and I was standing here, and I want my vote to be reflected.
Excuse me?
I want my vote to be reflected because I was
Okay, yes, your vote will be reflected.
How? Because
Your vote will be reflected in the journal. It will be reflected in the journal.
as such as what?
Every alderman has an opportunity to issue a letter that goes in the journal that reflects their vote. So you can issue a statement that will be part of the permanent records and in the journal for the four bills that you.
I understand that. The problem is that I had already told, I gave you a written response that I did not want those in there.
I know, but then it's up
wait, I let you listen. Okay, I then stood up at this mic and I was going to bring it up again to
I-
say to make sure. And so now
I'd say
you-
not in a timely fashion, Alderman.
yes, I was. If you look at this thing, you'll see I
When
was standing here.
I was talking to the Alderman from the 22nd, I was watching that motion, and you were not standing.
I was already standing. I was.
You
okay?
stood once.
And I had already given it to you,
All right,
saying I wanted. And I
Alderwoman,
had, wait, let me just finish. So you did your explanation. I have a right as a sitting member to request any and all things that I want on the consent calendar taken off the consent calendar, which I had done. So
No,
any
you-
alderman
you
can.
do that
Let
by-
me just finish. I'll let you finish. Any alderman can make it so we don't have a consent calendar because they can challenge each and every one. So I should not be doing a response. You should be doing a response, and you should look at that tape, and you'll see I was sitting here, and I did give it to you in writing, requested that those bills be taken off. So you've taken away my chance to address those bills that I want to, and I most certainly was not going to vote for them. And I think you ought to be addressing it, not me, because I did what I was supposed to do.
Okay. Again, Alderwoman, anyone has an opportunity to stand and say that they want a bill removed from the consent calendar. Giving me a note and me announcing it is a courtesy that I offer to all the people, but is wholly and completely up to you to stand and say that you want the aforementioned bills removed. But what I will do in deference to you is I will issue a letter that will go in the Journal that states that the Alderwoman from the 1st wants her vote for Board Bills 18, 67, 68, and 69 reflected as a vote in the negative. So we move past that. I know, I appreciated that. I appreciate it. Okay. Yeah. Okay. All right. I appreciate that. So moving on. Third reading, report of engrossments.
Board Bill 70, sponsored by Alderman Conway, an ordinance designating a portion of the city as a redevelopment area known as the Municipal Courts Building Hotel Redevelopment Area pursuant to the Real Property Tax Increment Allocation Redevelopment Act, adopting and approving a redevelopment plan, adopting and approving a redevelopment project for the portion of the redevelopment area known as RPA 1, adopting tax increment financing within RPA 1, making findings with respect thereto, establishing the Municipal Courts Building Hotel RPA 1 Special Allocation Fund, authorizing certain actions by city officials, and containing a severability clause.
Alderman from the 17th, you recognize on the third reading and final passage of Board Bill number 70.
Yes, Mr. President, members of the board, in the absence of the Alderman from the 8th, I rise to request third reading and final passage of Board Bill number 70.
Moved by the Alderman from the 17th, entertained, seconded by the Alderman from the 10th. Any discussion? Alderwoman from the 1st.
Thank you, Mr. President, members of the board. I rise in opposition to Board Bill 70. This is a tax increment financing. Again, one of the things we keep talking about is that we're going to adopt some kind of new rules about tax increment financing. Downtown is one of the areas that we need to have a rule about. Both 70 and 71 are unnecessary, and at some point we are going to stop giving tax increment financing for downtown in several areas in the central quarter at the expense of the schools and at the expense of all the other areas that need development in the community. If we put a limit on where we could do tax increment financing and tax abatement, and we looked at some kind of plan of what we have done in the past, and we made those areas compete, and then we would get developers that would want to go someplace else. As long as you just keep pouring all the money downtown or into the central quarters or the border wards, you do not help development in other parts of the community. And that's a shame, because development in other parts of the community is what we need to have a healthy St. Louis. For this reasons and others, I rise to oppose tax increment financing for this bill, and if we're ever going to get our schools on any place near the level we need to have it at, we're going to have to stop giving away everything, the sink, the kitchen sink and everything else. And I oppose and ask for a roll call.
All right. Any further discussion? Any further discussion? Alderman from the 17th, recognize the close on the third reading and final passage of Board Bill number 70.
Yes, Mr. President, I will be holding off casting my vote to make sure that we have enough people here, as we've lost a few folks, but I renew my motion. Thank you.
All right, it's been moved by the Alderman from the 17th, seconded by the Alderman from the 10th, that we third read and final pass Board Bill number 70. Madam Clerk, please call the roll.
Alderwoman Tyus. Alderwoman Flowers. Alderman Bosley. Alderman Moore. Alderwoman Hubbard. Alderwoman Ingracia. Alderman Kotar.
Abstain.
Alderman Conway. Alderman Gunther. Alderman Vollmer. Alderwoman Martin. Alderman Arnowitz. Alderwoman Murphy. Alderwoman Howard. Alderwoman Green. Alderman Oldenburg. Alderman Rhodey. Alderman Kennedy. Alderwoman Davis. Alderwoman Spencer. Alderman Muhammad. Alderman Boyd. Alderman Vaccaro. Alderman Ogilvy. Alderman Cone. Alderman Williamson. Alderwoman Boyd. President Reed.
Aye.
Alderman Moore. Alderwoman Hubbard. Alderwoman Ingracia. Alderman Conway. Alderman Gunther. Alderman Arnowitz. Alderman Rhodey. Alderman Kennedy. Alderman Muhammad.
And the Alderman from the 23rd would like to change his vote.
Oh, okay. What Alderman Muhammad said? 15, 16. Alderman Cone. 17. And who was changing?
Alderwoman from the 6th, did you get her change?
6. Oh, okay. 17. You have 18? Oh. 18 aye votes, 2 no votes, 2 abstain.
By a vote, you sustain the motion. Alderman from the 17th and third read and finally passed Board Bill number 70.
Board Bill number 71, sponsored by Alderman Conway, an ordinance authorizing the execution of a redevelopment agreement between the city and MCB Hotel Owner LLC, prescribing the form and details of said agreement, authorizing other related actions in connection with such agreement, and containing a severability clause.
Alderman from the 17th, you recognize on third read and final passage of Board Bill number 71.
I move for third reading, final passage, Board Bill 71.
It's been moved by the Alderman from the 17th, seconded by the Alderman from the 10th. There's been a request for previous roll. Hearing no objection, motion carries.
Board Bill number 72, sponsored by Alderman Conway, an ordinance recommended by the Board of Investment and Apportionment authorizing and directing the issuance and delivery of tax increment revenue notes for a municipal courts building hotel redevelopment project in principal amount of not to exceed $9,870,000 plus issuance costs, prescribing the form and details of such notes and covenants and agreements made by the city to facilitate and protect the payment thereof, and containing a severability clause.
Alderman from the 17th, you recognize on third read and final passage of Board Bill number 72.
Yes, Mr. President, I move for third reading, final passage of Board Bill number 72.
Moved by the Alderman from the 17th, seconded by the Alderman from the 10th. Any discussion? There's been a request for a previous roll. Hearing no objection, motion carries.
That is the extent of third reading report of engrossment and final passage.
Report of enrollment.
Board bills 29, 49, I'm sorry, I said 29, I meant 21, excuse me. 21, 49, 74, 75, 64, 18, 28, 46, 47, 54, 67, 68, 69, 62, 65, 51, 70, 71, 72, 63, 73, 80, 88, 45 as amended, 81, 82, 83, and 90.
Just going to repeat those. Could you repeat those one more time?
Yes, sir. 21, 49,
74,
74, 75, 64, 18, 28, 46, 47,
54,
54, 54, 67, 68, 69, 62, 65, 51, 70, 71, 72, 63, 73, 80, 88, 45 as amended, 81, 82, 83, and 90.
All other business being suspended, the president shall in open session affix his signature hereto to the end that these may become law.
I read Board Bill 28, but it should be 38.
First reading of resolutions.
Resolution 85, sponsored by Alderwoman Green and Alderwoman Ingracia. The Board of Aldermen directs the Ways and Means Committee to establish a subcommittee on budget oversight and provide a report to the full Board of Aldermen on findings by January the 1st, 2018.
Alderwoman from the 15th, you recognize on first reading resolution number 85.
Thank you, Mr. President, members of the board. I'd like to move that Resolution 85 gets moved to the Ways and Means Committee.
It's been moved by the Alderwoman from the 15th. Entertain a second on that motion. Seconded by the Alderwoman from the 6th. That we place resolution 85 in Ways and Means. All in favor signify by saying aye. Opposed, motion carries. Madam Clerk, please place resolution 85 in Ways and Means.
So noted. Resolution 86, sponsored by Alderwoman Green, Alderman Arnowitz, Williamson, and Alderwoman Ingracia. The Board of Aldermen directs the Public Safety Committee to hold hearings on the police overtime audit and provide a report to the full Board of Aldermen by November the 1st, 2017.
Alderwoman from the 15th, you recognize on first reading of resolution number 86.
Thank you, Mr. President, members of the board. I'd like to move that Resolution 86 is sent to Public Safety Committee.
Moved by the Alderwoman from the 15th, seconded by the Alderwoman from the 6th. Any discussion? All in favor signify by saying aye. Opposed, motion carries. Madam Clerk, please place resolution 86 into public safety.
So noted. Resolution 87, sponsored by Alderwoman Green, Alderman Bosley, Williamson, and Alderwoman Ingracia. The Board of Aldermen Public Safety Committee shall hold hearings on the receipts and uses of asset forfeiture assets and funds, including any received under federal asset forfeiture sharing by St. Louis Metropolitan Police Department, and issue a report to the full Board of Aldermen by November the 1st, 2017.
Alderwoman from the 15th, you recognize on the first reading of resolution number 87.
Thank you, Mr. President, members of the board. I'd like to move that Resolution 87 be sent to the Public Safety Committee.
Moved by the Alderwoman from the 15th, seconded by the Alderwoman from the 6th. Any discussion? All in favor signify by saying aye. Opposed, motion carries. Madam Clerk, please place resolution number 87 in public safety.
So noted. That's the extent of first reading of resolution.
Second reading.
The following resolution was reported out of the Housing Committee. Resolution 36 as amended, sponsored by Alderwoman Hubbard, Enterprise Zone for 1220 St. Charles, LLC.
Alderman from the 17th, you recognize on the second reading of resolution number 36 as amended.
In the absence of the Alderwoman from the 5th, I ask that we approve second reading for this resolution.
It's been moved by the Alderman from the 17th, seconded by the Alderman from the 22nd. Any discussion? It's been moved and seconded that we adopt resolution 36 as amended. All in favor signify by saying aye. Opposed, motion carries.
That's the extent of second reading of resolution.
Miscellaneous unfinished business.
We have none.
Announcements.
Tuesday, July the 11th, Public Safety Committee meeting at 10 a.m. in the Kennedy Room. Wednesday, July the 12th, Housing meeting at 9 a.m. in the Kennedy Room. Friday, full board meeting, 10 a.m. in the chambers, and that is our last meeting before our summer break. That's the extent of my announcement.
Any further announcements? Any further announcements? Alderman from the 3rd.
Real quick, Miss Patricia, who was here this morning, she'll be having an event for her 21st year in Forest Park on Saturday, starting at 10 a.m. So just putting that out there. Thank you.
Excellent. Any further announcements? Any further announcements? Alderman from the 19th.
Very quickly, Miss Tilly's Corner will be having a block party on this Saturday from 1 to 3 p.m. We'll also be doing another community event in Chambers Park, Rock the Community. We'll have all services and information to help residents, most especially our youth and our seniors. So that event is from 3 to 8 p.m. Also, this Saturday, as you know, the mayor's office is going to have an informational forum at Vashon High School at 10 a.m. to discuss the new suggestions for police chief. And as I shared with you, I will continue to talk about the National Urban League Convention, which will be here from July 26th to the 29th. And we are excited because we're having all kinds of career opportunities there. We're bringing the Shark Tank. Those people will be here. They will perform their program here, and they'll be offering $10,000 to a number of new business startups and/or expansions. And so we're looking forward to that. I'll announce the rest of it next week. Thank you.
All right, thank you. Any further announcements? Any further announcements? Alderman from the 22nd, you're recognized on the motion to excuse.
Yes, thank you, Mr. President, members of the board. I move to excuse the alderman from the 5th ward, alderwoman from the 5th ward and the alderman from the 9th ward due to necessary absence.
Moved by the alderman from the 22nd, seconded by the alderman from the 10th. Any discussion? All in favor signify by saying aye. Aye. Opposed, motion carries. Alderman from the 22nd, you're recognized on the motion to adjourn.
Mr. President, I move to adjourn the Board of Aldermen until next Friday, July the 13th.
Moved by the alderman from the 22nd,
14th.
seconded.
The 14th.
Yeah, perfect. Moved by the alderman from the 22nd, seconded by the alderman from the 25th. All in favor signify by saying aye. Aye. Opposed, we stand adjourned.
You ain't make a